Hello everyone, my name is Iqbal Singh Sandhu and I'm the Faculty for Political Science and International Relations in Vajiram Ravi. Today in this video, we are going to have a detailed discussion on Political Science and International Relations paper which has been recently conducted by UPSC on 16th of January 2022. In this video, we will discuss questions which were asked in PSIR paper 2, section A. Before I start doing the discussion, I'd like to discuss a few details with you. I'd like to tell all of you that it gives me immense pleasure to inform all of you that all the questions which were asked in the exam this year could have been easily attempted with the help of our class discussion and class notes. All questions which were asked this year were elaborately covered in our class discussions and students were given elaborate notes on all these topics. Therefore, all our students who wrote the exam this year, who wrote the exam on 16th of January 2022, are all very happy. They are very satisfied with the way they have been able to attempt the exam because they had got all possible and best possible guidance when they were studying with us. And now for the benefit of the larger student community and aspirants of UPSC, of the Civil Service Examination, we are making this video where we will try to have a brief discussion on each and every question which was asked in the paper this year. And before we start discussing the questions, the content which could have been used to write these answers, I would like to also discuss that what is the approach which you should follow while attempting questions in PSIR papers, because that is also very important to score good marks. So let us start with our discussion. PSIR paper 2, section A. And obviously, you all know that there are, in each section there is 5 short notes and then you have other 3 questions which are subdivided into 15 markers and 20 markers. So we'll obviously start with short notes. But before I start with the short notes, I'd like to tell you that see here, UPSC has given a very clear instruction that you have to write these short notes in 150 words. So this clear instruction given by the UPSC must be followed. The instruction is very clear and you must follow it. If you will not follow this instruction, it will have 2 very bad consequences. First is it can be very irritating for the examiner when it has been explicitly mentioned in the paper that short notes must be written in 150 words. If you exceed the word limit, it can be very irritating for the examiner and therefore, the examiner may give you less marks. Second, the exam is designed very scientifically. Exam is designed very scientifically. UPSC has designed the exam in a manner that if we adhere to the word limits which have been prescribed in the question, then only we will be able to complete the paper, otherwise it is not possible. If we exceed the word limit in these questions, then we will not be able to attempt all the questions, which is also a necessary requirement. If we are not able to attempt the entire paper, if we end up leaving 2 to 3 questions, then we are already out of the race and that will have a very bad impact on our total score. Therefore, adhering to the instruction, adhering to the requirement, which is word limit, is very, very important. So how will you be able to do it? Now you can adhere to the word limit only if you hit the nail on the head. If you understand the requirement of the question. If you understand the requirement of the question very carefully, then only you will be able to adhere to the word limit and then only you will be able to write what is required and then only you will be able to avoid writing unnecessary details. So obviously, to understand the requirement and the context of the question, whenever we read the question, we must identify the key terms in the question. For example, in this first short note, we can say political economy approach is one key term and comparative politics is a second key term. But so once we've understood the key term in the question, then we can start elaborating on that. But there's also one more trick which can help you understand the requirement of the question, the specific requirement of the question. This you will be able to understand by looking at the directing words which have been given in the question. The specific requirement of the question is often indicated indirectly in the directing words which are in the question. These directing words are also called as question tags at times. Now, what are these question tags? You must have noticed that in all questions which UPSC asks, they use these question tags. For example, discuss, elucidate, explain, comment, examine, critically examine, elaborate, substantiate. So such question tags, such directing words, directing terms are mentioned in the question. Now these question tags can help us you understand the specific requirement of the question. What is the specific requirement of the question? For example, if they've used the question tag discuss, this means that you have to discuss all possible viewpoints of various different scholars and theoretical viewpoints on a particular issue which has been asked in the question. If you got this question tag called elucidate or explain, this means that you have to do a detailed description of the particular issue, and you do not have to go into the critical analysis or the cons related to the issue which have been asked. If you get this term comment means that again detailed description, but also you have to look into the pros and cons both. Pros and cons both sides of the divide must be highlighted if you have to comment. Comment means detailed description, comprehensive analysis, which would also include both sides of the divide. If you get this question tag examine or do you agree, here also you have to do a detailed evaluation and examination of the issue which has been asked, which would include description, which would include highlighting the divide, and in your concluding paragraph you can even write down about what is the most widely accepted viewpoint or what is the most pragmatic way forward which should be followed. And similarly, you can get these terms like critically examine. Critically examine, if you get critically examine, this means you have to give more focus on critical analysis, that is the criticisms, the challenges involved in the issue which has been asked in the question. If you get this question tag substantiate, substantiate means that you whatever issue has been asked, describe the issue, detailed description of the issue, but then also substantiate your arguments with the help of examples, real-time examples. So this is what these question tags they mean. So whenever you get these question tags, you must have a look at them, and this can help you understand the specific requirement of the question, and therefore it can help you understand it will help you making a proper structure of your answer. You can't do this. Read the term in the question. For example, in the first short note we just saw, the term is political economy approach. You can't start writing whatever you know on it. Whatever you know on it. If you read Marxist approach, just that because you have read Marxist approach in the question, you can't start doing this. You can't start writing whatever you know on Marxist approach. Then you'll never be able to adhere to the word limit, and you'll never be able to satisfy the requirement of the question. You must understand the context and the requirement of the question. So now to understand the context and the requirement of the question, these question tags can help you a lot. Indirectly, they can help you a lot. So always do focus on this, and this will help you understand the requirement of the question. Here also, we see in this year's paper, which we are going to discuss today, we see that these question tags were there. For example, in the short notes only, in the first question they have told you to discuss, second question is comment, third is comment. In the fifth short note we have again discuss. Similarly, in the other questions also these question tags are there. So these question tags will help us understand the specific requirement and the approach which we must follow in the discussion. Also, while discussing these questions, while discussing these questions, we will definitely, in each and every question, I'll help you understand the specific requirement. And this is the method which we follow, which I just discussed with you. Also, besides this, while discussing these questions, I will show you snippets of our class notes. I'll show you snippets of my class notes, which will help you understand that how all these questions could have been easily attempted with the help of our class notes, the notes which we give to our students. So while discussing the answers, I will also try and show you the snippets of our notes, the notes which we give to our students, which were so helpful this year to attempt all these questions. So now let us commence the discussion. Now that we've understood what approach we must follow, now let us commence the discussion on these questions. So in this particular question, the tag word is discuss. This means that, we have to, first of all, describe what is political economy approach, and then we have to give different schools of thought, different views of different scholars on this particular approach. This is exactly what we have to do, and this is what we will do. So in the introductory paragraph, a lot of students, they have this problem at times. How are we going to start writing the answer? What should be the introductory paragraph? So a lot of students have such doubts. So how you would start? Just you look at it, the two keywords are there: political economy approach and comparative analysis of politics. So the keyword comparative, so basically what they have asked you, they've asked that in comparative politics, there is this approach called political economy approach, and you describe that. So in the introductory paragraph, what are you going to do? First define what is comparative politics. Comparative politics is comparative study of different political systems in the world. Father of comparative politics was Aristotle. Comparative politics can further be divided into two categories: traditional and modern. And political economy approach falls under the category of a modern comparative politics. This is your introductory paragraph. So you have introduced the entire context at what comparative politics is and in which category the political economic approach falls. So this is our introductory paragraph, and from the second paragraph onwards, just start describing what is political economy approach and give different viewpoints. And that is exactly what you have to do. So this is how you can do it. Political economy approach falls in the category of modern comparative politics. This particular approach basically studies the interface of economics and politics, because this particular approach believes that economic policies can help us understand the nature of the state and the politics of a particular system. So what do we do in comparative politics? In comparative politics, we try to compare different political systems of the world. Do a comparative analysis. Then now there can be so many different ways of doing comparative analysis. You can follow a political economy approach, you may follow a political development approach, you may follow political culture approach, you may follow political modernization approach. There are so many different, you may follow legal institutional approach. And there are so many different approaches. In this question, you've been asked political economy approach. So all these different approaches, basically, they do have different benchmarks. They give us different benchmarks, different methods of doing comparative analysis. So the political economy approach says that if you study the economic policies of a particular political system, it will help you understand the nature of that political system. It will help you understand the nature of the state. And this should be the criteria on the basis of which we should do comparative analysis of different political systems. So this is what the political economy approach says, and this should be our second paragraph. Then you should also mention that this approach is both descriptive as well as prescriptive. Descriptive means that it helps understand the political economic policies of a particular state, political system, and then is also prescriptive. That means it prescribes that what are the best possible economic policies which should be followed in order to have a more efficient political system, in order to have a well-working political system in a particular country or in a particular state. So it is both descriptive as well as prescriptive, and there are so many different schools of thought in political science, in comparative politics, which have used the political economy approach to understand the nature of the state and to do comparative study of different political systems across the world, and therefore have prescribed their prescriptions also, that what are those economic policies which should be followed. So we will discuss these because the question says the tag word is describe. So we have to describe different views. So there are the Marxists who does this. Marx and Engels use the political economy approach. You should be very well aware. In fact, for Marx and Engels, the economics of the society was the basic variable, the base, and everything else was in the superstructure. Then the neo-Marxist is there. Neo-Marxists are the dependency school theorists. The dependency school theorists like Rolf Prebisch, Samir Amin, Andre Gundo Frank, Immanuel Wallerstein, semi-periphery core model, which has been given by Immanuel Wallerstein, world system theory. They all fall under the neo-Marxist school of thought. Their viewpoints can be quoted in the answer, especially the core periphery, semi-periphery model given by Immanuel Wallerstein, where he says that the drain of wealth is happening from periphery to the core. That can be highlighted, the dependency school. Then the classical approach given by David Ricardo and Adam Smith, they have given the theory of comparative advantage. They have supported the idea of free trade. So that is something which can be used to give a particular viewpoint in this particular answer. Then welfare economics. Welfare economics, people like John Maynard Keynes, Galbraith, Amartya Sen, Jean Drèze, these are welfare economists who have prescribed that the basic dharma of the state should be to ensure welfare of the people, and there should be enough such economic policies should be framed where you are able to pass on the benefits of the growth to the last individual. Inclusive growth, welfare economics is what they have recommended. Their viewpoints can be neoliberals. Jagdish Bhagwati is an example. Neoliberal economic policies have been suggested for a stable political system. Neoliberal economic policies are rollback of the state, liberalization, privatization, globalization, LPG policies, and in fact was popularized neoliberal economic policies, a part of the Washington Consensus popularized by Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in terms of as part of the Washington Consensus. And in fact, Margaret Thatcher had given the TINA factor that there is no other alternative. All economies all over the world should follow neoliberal economic policies. Then the public choice approach. The public choice approach says that there should be a minimum state, and if there's a minimum state, then there would be minimum corruption. This has been given by James Buchanan. So that can be mentioned here. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there's so many different viewpoints you can use. All these different schools of thought have used the political economy approach to understand the political system. They can be quoted in the answer. Then why not India? In case of India, this approach has been used by scholars like Atul Kohli, Gunnar Myrdal, and Rudolph to understand the impact of Green Revolution, neoliberal economic policies, and land reforms. That can be mentioned here. And in the concluding paragraph, you must also mention that this approach suffers from the fallacy of economic reductionism because it only takes into consideration one variable, that is the study of economic policies, to understand the political system and to do comparative political analysis. So this is how your short note is over. Just one line each on all of this and your short note is over. And that is how it would be such an academically rich short note where you have used multiple viewpoints. And that is how you can score maximum marks. The second short note now, let us discuss the second short note. The second short note is political parties and pressure groups are sine qua non of democracy comment. It's a statement-based question. You've been given a statement, you've been given a quotation, and then you've been told to comment on it. So again, what you have to do here, whenever there's a statement quotation based question, what you have to do, you have to try to understand the essence of the statement. You have to try to understand the essence of the quotation with a hidden meaning there. And what is the statement trying to refer to basically? What is the issue which is trying to highlight? And if you are able to do that, that is the particular issue. But if you're able to understand the soul and the essence of the statement, then you have to elaborate. Whenever you've told to comment, basically that means you have to elaborate with the message which is being conveyed in the statement and elaborate in a manner that also highlight all sides of the divide. So very comprehensive elaboration which you have to do whenever you are told to comment on it. So, political parties and the pressure groups are sine qua non of democracy. Very simple statement. The only problem which the students may have in this particular statement is that what is the meaning of sine qua non? Sine qua non means something which is absolutely necessary, something which is very important. So this is what sine qua non means. So basically the statement means that political parties and pressure groups, they play a necessary role, they have a very important role in democracies. And that is what has to be highlighted here. So basically in your answer here, you are going to highlight the role of political parties and role of pressure groups in democracies. How do they affect the political system? What is their impact on a political system? That is what you have to highlight here. So what will be your introductory paragraph here? What is going to be your introductory paragraph? Basically, first you have to elaborate what has been asked in the statement. You have to elaborate what has been asked in the statement. So it has been you have to elaborate what has been said in the statement. So in the statement, they've used this term sine qua non. You must elaborate this. Political parties and pressure groups, they have a necessary role in a democracy. They both play the role of interest aggregation and interest articulation in a political system. This is what we study in political science. So you must mention this. What is the role? What is the basic function of political parties and pressure groups? Interest aggregation and interest articulation. Very important role in a democracy. If the people in a democracy, what is a democracy? Democracy is a proper participative democracy means that people should have say in the government. And how are they going to have a say? If they're going to have a say in the election of the government, they should have a say in the policies of the government. How, in a participative democracy, how are they going to have that say? Their interests, the interests of the people, the needs of the people must be conveyed to the government. And this is done by the political parties and pressure groups. They play a very important role of interest aggregation and interest articulation. This should be your introductory paragraph. And then in the next two paragraphs, in one paragraph of political parties, one paragraph of pressure groups, and your short note is over, where you highlight the role of political parties and where you highlight the role of pressure groups. That is exactly what you have to do. So in political parties, you can, again, in the political party paragraph, you can start with what is the role, interest aggregation is the role, that is the function, and then you highlight different viewpoints, the different ways it does affect. There's a normative narrative, there is a behavioral narrative. Normative narrative in this, scholars like Edmund Burke, Lenin, they say political parties are a collection of individuals which have a common ideology and they're trying to pursue their common ideology, the objectives of their common ideology. For example, Lenin gives the concept of vanguard party. The vanguard party, which will help people develop political consciousness, which will help develop a political consciousness among the workers to bring the communist revolution. So it's basically based on ideology. But the behavioral approach says that no, political parties are basically powerhouses. The basic objective is to gather power, accumulate power. Ideologies are irrelevant. And in this, Robert Michel has given the concept of iron law of oligarchy, that power is always concentrated among the elites in the political party, irrespective of their ideology. Should be mentioned. Then you may also use the Duverger law and the viewpoint of Sartori to help understand the impact of political parties in a democracy. Duverger law talks about different kinds of political parties, that the electoral system can help determine different types of political parties. That should be mentioned here. And Sartori says that political parties they help shape political system. The political parties, nature of political parties help shape political system. Political parties of influence, of consequence, help shape political system. That is also true for a democratic political system. So that is what should be mentioned here. So once you are able to do that, then you go to pressure groups. Pressure groups perform the role of interest articulation. Feiner says that they can be described as invisible empires. Basically, they pressurize the government and they try to influence government policy making. They try to influence government policy making. They try to influence different government policy making while articulating the interests of the members of the particular pressure group. So that the difference here is that the pressure groups, they do not have such an aim to occupy that power role, that grab a position. No, they are here basically, the role which pressure groups they perform is, they articulate the interests of their members and they try to influence government policy making. That is what they do. And in fact, the behavioral approach says, the traditional approach uses the term pressure groups, but the behavioral approach uses the term interest group, because interest group is a better description of the role which they perform. That is interest articulation. So therefore, that particular point can also be highlighted in this paragraph on pressure groups. Then the viewpoint of different scholars. Robert Dahal has given concept of polygarchy. While analyzing role of pressure groups in democracy is given the concept of polygarchy. Gabriel Almond has given a fourfold division of pressure groups. Fourfold division of pressure groups. He has given classification of pressure groups that there can be 4 types: institutional, non-associational, associational, and anomic. So all this must be mentioned in your answer. So your short note is already done. That is all. This is what you have to do. So 2 short notes done. Very simple, very straightforward questions which were asked in the exam. Now let us move on to the other short notes. Third short note says, it says again a statement-based question. It says Marx's approach to study of IR has lost its relevance in the post-Cold War era. It's a quotation, it's a statement, and then you'll be told to comment on it. You have to understand the basic essence, the basic message which is being conveyed in the statement. What is the basic message? The key word is the Marxist approach. Yes, we know that it is on a Marxist approach. But what is the context of the statement? The context of the statement is that the Marxist approach in the post-Cold War era has lost relevance. So basically it is trying to point towards that debate that whether Marxist approach is relevant or not in the post-Cold War era, and you have to comment on it. So when you have to comment means you have to elaborate what have been asked, what is the message which is being conveyed in the statement, and also you have to highlight both sides of the divide, both sides. So here we will also talk, in our answer, we will talk about the ones who say that it has lost relevance. We'll also talk about the ones who say it has not lost relevance. And obviously, who are the ones who say it has lost relevance? The liberal says it has lost relevance. And who are the ones who say no, it hasn't lost relevance? Who say Marxist approach is still very relevant to understand international politics? Who are they? The Marxist scholars. So this is what we are going to do. So here, you know what, in the course of the discussion, before I discuss this, I would also want to do in this particular video, what I'm trying to do is that I would also show you the snippets of my class notes. The notes which I circulate among my students. And those notes, they can be so helpful to answer these questions, because these are so detailed notes which are given to our students while discussing these topics in our classes. So I'll also, show you the notes which can be so helpful to attempt these questions. Just because They are so straightforward questions asked directly from the notes. And you can easily attempt. So while discussing the answers here, I'll also try to show you the notes which are circulated among the students as far as this PSIR is concerned. So this is our entire handout on Marxist approach which we give to our students. So somebody who's read this can easily attempt this particular question. So first of all, you start with what? It is talking about the post-Cold War era. So you must describe post-Cold War era first. That should be the introduction. That post-Cold War era, in the post-Cold War era, nature of international politics have changed. Nature of international politics have changed. Today's the post-Cold War world order can be best described with the help of John Burton's cobweb model, Joseph Nye's complex interdependence model, again Joseph Nye's 3D chessboard model. So nature of world politics have changed. We do not live in a state-centric world anymore. Multinational corporations, NGOs, transnational terrorist networks, that means non-state actors have emerged. Multiple non-state actors have emerged in world politics, which have started affecting world politics. So nature of world politics has changed in the post-Cold War era. This is how you can convey the message. And then in the same introductory paragraph, you can say that all these liberal scholars like Joseph Nye, like John Burton, the liberal scholars, the liberals, they do question the importance of and the relevance of Marxist approach in a post-Cold War era. And you must mention about Francis Fukuyama. Francis Fukuyama was the person who, after the end of Cold War, gave the thesis of end of history. End of history thesis, basically by giving the end of history thesis, he celebrated the fact that communism has been defeated forever. Communism is derived from the Marxist viewpoint, that communism has been defeated forever, that liberalism has triumphed over communism. So therefore, talking about how liberalism is now relevant and communism not relevant anymore. So this is what the liberals has to say. This is what liberals say. This you must be explained in the introductory paragraph itself. The liberal critique of Marxism, basically. The liberal critique of Marxism should be your introductory paragraph. Liberals, they describe the nature of the post-Cold War era by giving these different models of cobweb, complex interdependence, 3D chessboard model. And then people like Francis Fukuyama, they question the relevance of Marxism in world politics. So that should be our introductory paragraph itself, that we highlight what is there in the statement. And then the other side of the divide, that is the Marxists who say no. Today, even in the post-Cold War era, Marxist approach can be very helpful in understanding international politics, in understanding the nature of international politics. So these are all scholars who are followers of Marx and have tried to use Marxist ideas in order to understand international relations, in order to understand world politics. Which are all these scholars? So obviously, I'm not going to discuss the entire handout here. I'm going to only discuss the scholars which we can quote in these answers: Dependency School, Gramscian School, Critical School, and New Marxism. So Dependency School, the Dependency School scholars I've already mentioned to you. These are the scholars which are all mentioned in our handouts: Raul Prebisch, Theo Tonio dos Santos, Andre Gundo Frank, Samir Amin, Emmanuel Wallerstein. They've all said that, in the post-Cold War era, there have been rapid expansion of globalization, and they've criticized globalization. They've said that globalization is basically global spread of capitalism, which has not led to interdependence, which is the claim of the liberals, that it has led to interdependence and stability and prosperity. They say, no, it has not led to interdependence, stability, and prosperity. It has actually led to dependency. It has actually led to dependency. The third world have become more and more dependent on the first world, and the world system theory of Emmanuel Wallerstein says, he has given the core periphery side, semi-periphery model, which is there also in our handout. Properly, the table is given to our students. The core periphery, semi-periphery model says that the drain of wealth has happened from the periphery states, which are third world states, to the core. This is what has been happening. And this is happening through the non-state actors like multinational corporations, through non-state actors like NGOs, which also represent the interests of the MNCs, because they have an intrinsic link of corporate social responsibility with each other. This is what the Marxist critique of globalization is. So post-Cold War era has been all about globalization, and Marxism criticizes globalization in international politics. So therefore tries to understand post-Cold War era when you try to understand post-Cold War era from the perspective of Marxism, you see the dark side of globalization also, which is also necessary to understand international relations. Because there are so many countries in the world today, periphery states, which are still underdeveloped, where still there is problems of poverty and underdevelopment, and these problems have not been resolved. And this balloon of globalization and neoliberal policies was punctured during the 2008 economic recession, which originated in the American economy. There also Marxist perspective can help us understand the loopholes, the weaknesses of the system of liberal liberal ideas as far as international politics is concerned, liberal ideas of privatization, globalization, and liberalization, LPG policies. So that is what, and then also the role of semi-peripheries. The world system theory says that semi-peripheries are emerging economies like China and India. Semi-peripheries have helped sustain the global economic system. It has helped legitimize globalization. This is a point which you can use in attempting this particular question. Then the Gramscian school. We will use the Gramscian tradition in international relations. The neo-Marxist, Robert Cox. Robert Cox says that mainstream international relation theories like realism, like neorealism, they are trying to benefit the inhabitants of the developed states, the ruling elites. And their purpose is to reinforce the ruling hegemony and legitimize the status quo. He describes them as problem-solving approaches, which helps legitimize an unjust and deeply unequal system. So if you have to understand the inequality in the world among different states, this Marxist approach, the Marxist dependency school Marxist, the critical theory, Marxists like Robert Cox, who follow Gramscian tradition. I hope you know what is the basic idea of Gramsci, the idea of hegemony, that these have become hegemonic ideas. Globalization, free trade has become hegemonic ideas. And they are perpetuating inequality in the world. So Marxist approach can help us understand that. So that also should be highlighted. Then also the emancipatory school, the Frankfurt school, the critical theory. There, in one line, you can also mention the viewpoint of the critical theory, where they say that we should redefine the territorial boundaries and create new moral boundaries, and the civil society networks, their role should increase in world politics. So these are all, this is all we can do very easily. Any student who have read our notes can highlight this debate, relevance of Marxism. Liberals say it is not relevant anymore. The Marxists say it is. The Marxists criticize the liberals. Liberals criticize the Marxists. So you start the short note with the liberal critique of Marxism by describing the nature of the post-Cold War era, and then you, in the rest of your answer, you talk about the different Marxist perspectives which help us understand international relations, even in the post-Cold War era. So that's how you can attempt this particular question. Very simple, very simple. The next short note is, what measures have been undertaken by UN for its reforms? This question is asked every year, and I always tell my students that UN reforms is the favorite UPSC topic. UPSC has a love affair with UN reforms. Whether it is GS papers, whether it is the PSIR optional papers, every year questions are asked. Last year also there was a question on UN reforms. This year also there's a question on a short note on UN reforms. So what steps UN has taken to do UN reforms? So again, I would again show you a snippet of my class notes to help you understand that how we cover this in our class. So in our class, we do an elaborate discussion on the topic of UN reforms, and I'll show it to you. I've only brought few snippets of the class notes to the recording here. So obviously, if you have to attempt this question, you must quote the Secretary General. You must quote the Secretary General. The question is very straightforward. What UN has done for UN reforms? So basically, what is UN doing to do UN reforms? And in the question we must also highlight why UN reforms are required, what method, how we can reform UN, and what method is presently being followed, and what reforms is presently being pursued. This is what we have to do in the question here. So we must quote Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General. Antonio Guterres, he has highlighted the issue that global challenges require global solutions. The world has a surplus of multilateral challenges, but not enough multilateral answers to these. You must understand, you must highlight in your answer that United Nations represents multilateralism. United Nations represent multilateralism. And if UN will not be reformed, this reflects crisis of multilateralism. Global challenges can be best dealt with the help of multilateral approach in international politics. That is, countries cooperating with each other, helping each other, joining hands with each other. But if we do not do that, then the global community will not be able to overcome global challenges like climate change, peace and security, poverty, hunger, sustainable development. These are all global challenges. Terrorism. So Antonio Guterres has highlighted that if you want want all these global challenges to be, if you want the global community to find solutions to global problems, then we must have multilateral solutions. That is, only by strengthening UN we will have these multilateral solutions. So you must start the answer with such a quotation, Antonio Guterres quotation, and then highlight that how UN needs reforms. In your first paragraph, you should highlight UN needs reforms. UN is suffering from a crisis of legitimacy. UN is suffering from problems like trust deficit, democratic deficit. UN lacks transparency, accountability. The record of UN has been not as envisaged by the founders of UN. So therefore, UN, in order to remain relevant, UN needs reforms. And how can we reform? That also must mention how to reform. That can be done by amending the UN Charter. If you need structural reforms, you'll have to amend the UN Charter by using Article 108 of the UN Charter. That is with the help of 2/3 majority. What reform process is being followed right now? Right now, in the year 2008, United Nations, and in fact, before this water reform process is being followed, you must also briefly mention the reforms structural reforms which have already happened in the past, because that is what exactly has been asked in the question, that what reforms UN is pursuing. So these are the structural reforms of UN which have already been done in the past. In 1965, the strength of UN Security Council was increased from 11 to 15, must be mentioned. In 1965 itself, the strength of Economic Social Council was increased from 18 to 27, and then in 1973 to 54. This also must be mentioned. In 1968, the votes required to call a general conference to review the UN Charter was increased from 7 to 9. This also must be mentioned in the answer. So, these are the structural reforms which have been done in the past by amending the UN Charter. So this should be very brief. In only 3-4 lines, you should talk about it. Then what process is being followed right now to do these reforms? The process which is being followed right now to do this reform is Intergovernmental Negotiations Framework, which was adopted in 2008 by UN. In order to ensure equitable representation as well as expansion of UN Security Council. However, due to COVID, this particular process have been deferred right now, and this particular process is also suffering from a problem because there is no negotiating document. That means there is absence of negotiating document, which can also be described as that these text-based negotiations have not been initiated in UN. This is the need of the hour. This should be done. Then only reforms can be done. So this can be highlighted. Then the reforms which are being pursued right now. Antonio Guterres, the secretary, and in fact this was asked last year in the exam. Antonio Guterres has proposed reforms. That which reforms they should be pursued right now in UN. So he's basically talked about 3 types of reforms. Development system reforms. Development system reforms are that the entire system of ECOSOC should be strengthened in order to pursue sustainable development goals. There should be more coherence as far as specialized agencies is concerned and their area of operations is concerned on the ground. So in order to ensure sustainable development goals, development system reforms are required. This is what the present Secretary General says. Then management reforms. He says that UN needs more transparency, more accountability. The management system should be more effective. There should be more trust between UN members and the Secretariat of UN. Therefore, management reforms are required. So this is what also is being pursued right now. And peace and security architecture. Also, Antonio Guterres has said that as far as peace and security is concerned, there also reforms are required in terms of peacekeeping missions, in terms of peacekeeping operations, in line with the agenda for peace document of Boutros Ghali, which also we've discussed in our classes, which talks about peace building, which talks about not just peacekeeping but also peace building, which is a long-term process, which is much more comprehensive process. So robust peacekeeping should be done. This is what Antonio Guterres says. And in fact, Antonio Guterres has also suggested as a result of his suggestions, 2 new institutions have also been created in UN. That is Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs and Department of Peace Operations. These are 2 new institutions which have been created by UN to ensure proper peacekeeping, more effective peacekeeping operations. So in order to strengthen the peace and security architecture of UN, these reforms have been suggested. So this is what you should mention. These have been suggested by Antonio Guterres recently and is being pursued in UN right now. So this is how you can attempt this particular short note. And in the concluding paragraph, you must mention that UN, in order to uphold the concept of collective security as suggested by the liberal institutionalists like Woodrow Wilson, UN must be more effective. UN must play a more prominent and a relevant role in international politics, and this can only be done through the strengthening of UN, that is by reforms of UN. UN needs reforms, urgently needs reforms. This should be highlighted in the concluding paragraph, and you can also quote here scholars, experts, leaders who've commented on UN. You can quote people like Shashi Tharoor, which also we discussed in our classes. Previous Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld can be quoted in your answer, in your short note. Dag Hammarskjöld had also said that we have not created UN to create heaven on earth. It is basically about peace and security, and that will all depend on the will of the states. So all these quotations of these important leaders and important people as far as UN is concerned, Shashi Tharoor has been a former Under Secretary General of UN. Dag Hammarskjöld is a former Secretary General of UN. Truman is the former President of UN, and he was the President when UN was formed. So their viewpoints, which we do discuss in our classes, they can be mentioned in this particular short note to write a comprehensive answer. This is how you can do it. Then the next short note is, which again directly from our class notes, this is related to current developments. I had given these notes to especially to my test series students who was writing mains this year, because this thing happened after their coaching finished last year. So this is a very recent development. So it was given to everybody in when the present batch students been given these notes. So this exactly has been asked the question. Discuss the 5 proposals made by India in recent COP26 conference held in Glasgow. So basically, you must be all aware, Prime Minister Modi went to Glasgow, participated in COP26 meeting. COP26 meeting where he has announced Panchamrit. Panchamrit is 5 points which he highlighted, 5 promises which he had made, which India has made during the Glasgow summit, during COP26 conference on fighting climate change, combating climate change, mitigating climate change, adapting to climate change. So that is exactly what has been asked, and we've been told to discuss that. So we'll highlight those, which are those 5, especially we will talk about those 5, and then we will also do an analysis using the viewpoint of certain scholars and certain experts. We'll try and analyze that as well. So this is exactly this is the document which was circulated with our students, the handout which was circulated with our students, which can be used to attempt this particular question, talking about COP26 meeting. So in your introductory paragraph itself, you must highlight what is COP26. COP26 is basically a meeting, it's a part of an annual meeting which is called by UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. This time it was hosted by UK in Glasgow. Prime Minister Modi participated. As far as COP26 meeting is concerned, Glasgow Climate Pact was adopted. And during this particular meeting, Prime Minister Modi, he gave this Panchamrit 5 principles. These are details about the Glasgow Pact which has been signed, but that is not something which has not been asked in the question. So we will not mention about that. We will directly jump to the Panchamrit, the 5 points which Prime Minister Modi have highlighted in the Glasgow summit. So that is something which we will directly jump to. India at COP26, Panchamrit. So this is what Prime Minister Modi has done. So in his speech in Glasgow, he made 5 commitments on the behalf of India, that this is what India is going to do in the next few years in order to help world combat climate change. So these 5 we will highlight in our description, in our answer here. First is a commitment on net zero emissions. India has announced that India will achieve net zero emission status by the year 2070. That is the first point. The second point is emission intensity and renewables. So they under our INDC goals, intended nationally determined contribution goals, emission intensity goals have been revised. Earlier, we had promised that we are going to reduce 33 to 35% of our emission intensities from 2005 levels by 2030. This now has been renewed. It has been increased to 45%. Also, earlier it was announced that by the year 2030, India would ensure that 40% of its installed electrical capacity is sourced through non-fossil fuels. This has also been reviewed now. In the Glasgow summit, Prime Minister Modi has reviewed this. He said not 40%, we will increase it to 50%. So 3 we have completed. These are the 3 announcements made. 2 more announcements were there, non-fossil fuels. India has announced that by the year 2030, India will add 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel based energy capacity to India. So this also is the fourth. And the fifth announcement is cut in absolute emissions. Now this is something which is very significant. You must highlight in your answer. Never before this Glasgow summit which has happened last year, never before this, India has made any such commitment that they are going to reduce their absolute emissions. Earlier, India used to make this commitment that and in earlier commitments, we've always said that India will reduce emission intensity, that is, emission released per unit of GDP. Absolute emission reduction we had never committed. But this is something which has now been committed, that India by the year 2030, in absolute terms, India will try to reduce 1 billion tons from its projected emissions between now and 2030. So these are the 5 announcements which have been made by Prime Minister Modi in the COP26 summit, and these should be highlighted. He called them Panch Amrit. This should be highlighted. This is exactly what have been asked. And also, Prime Minister Modi on behalf of India announced there that the developed countries, they should contribute $1 trillion every year as climate finance in order to help developing countries combat climate change, instead of $100 billion which have been committed, and that too they are not able to provide, and they have failed to provide that too also. So he said $100 billion is not sufficient, it's $1 trillion which India should contribute. On this now, let us discuss the viewpoint of the experts. So, according to Shyam Saran, our former foreign secretary, what does he say? I will directly jump to his viewpoint on India's announcements in Glasgow summit. So he says India's announcements have been welcomed. Yes, welcomed in Glasgow. These are positive announcements, but at the same time, the favorable image which India was able to carve out because of these announcements, that has diluted to some extent because India refused to become part of initiatives on methane and deforestation, which was also part of the Glasgow summit this year. This he points out, and you should also highlight this in your answer, that India forced an amendment to Glasgow Pact. Initially, the Glasgow Pact had said that the countries of the world, they should phase out use of coal progressively over the years. India said no. India and China opposed. They said no, you replace this term phase out with phase down. So that is something which the other countries have not appreciated. This is a regressive step which India supported and India pushed for in the Glasgow summit, which has obviously created a negative sentiment, and that is why Shyam Saran says India should not do this. India can't can't be another China. India should protect Mother Nature. The world cannot have one more China. This is not something which India should do. So Indian announcements were welcomed, but these steps which India took there, one is forcing an amendment from coal's phase out to phase down. Instead of phase out, India suggested that the Glasgow Pact should use the term phase down, and also India refused to become part of the initiatives of methane and deforestation. So this is something this also are areas where India could have made better announcements, but that has not been done. Then there is also a viewpoint which you should highlight in your answer because you've been told to describe. So you should try to highlight all other viewpoints. There's also a viewpoint that India has made very aggressive announcements in Glasgow summit, but there India has pressing developmental needs. We have a vast poor population. We are still at a nascent stage of industrialization. So if we're making such robust announcements that all our future industrialization, majority of our future industrialization would be based on renewable energy resources, that is also an extra burden. And that is probably whether we will be able to do it while fulfilling our developmental needs or not is debatable. That particular issue has also been highlighted by many experts, and you should mention in your answers as well. So this is how you should and this is actually the entire handout here. We can't use everything what is there in the handout, but these are the points which I mentioned to you. These are the points which you could have used in this particular short note to attempt this particular short note. So we've done all 5 short notes. Now let us move on to the other 3 questions in this section. So students, now let us discuss question number 2A, 20 marker. The question was, the post-colonial state was thought of an entity that stood outside and above society as an autonomous agency. Explain. So you've been given a statement, you've been given a quotation, and you've been told to explain the quotation. This time they haven't used the term comment. This time they've only used the tag word explain. So that means explain means that we only have to restrict ourselves to the description of the statement which has been given in the question. The underlying message which is hidden in this particular statement, we have to basically do an elaborate description of that, and that is what is required. So this is what we have to do in this particular question. Now, I do believe that this year this was one of the very few questions which students may have come across a problem understanding. Not that it is a difficult question, because it is, but because the statement is, you have to do a little brainstorming to understand the hidden message which is there. So whenever you get such questions, don't panic. There's no problem. Just read it twice, just read it thrice, and just try to, understand what is the hidden underlying meaning here. If you're able to understand that, you will get it. So this particular question is also from the portion of comparative politics. In fact, more specifically, I'll tell you, this is from the post-colonial theory of state. This particular question is from the post-colonial theory of state, on a chapter of post-colonial theory of state. And this, in fact, is there in paper 1. We have a chapter on state, theories of state in paper 1. But then we've seen from the last few years, this trend is there that even the topics which does fall under the category of paper 1 are also asked in different manner in paper 2. Because there are many overlapping topics. In paper 2 also we have this particular topic of, the nature of state in a developed and a developing countries, the difference between that. So, they've asked this in this. So why I'm telling you this is that when you attempt this particular question, because it has been asked in the paper 2, so we would want, the examiner would want that we should use, the concepts and the tools which are given to us by comparative political analysis approaches to attempt this particular question. Rather than doing a detailed description of the post-colonial theory of state, we should use the tools and the concepts which we have learned in paper 2 syllabus to attempt this particular question. That is how we will do it. So I'll just break down the statement for you. The statement says post-colonial state was thought of an entity that stood outside and above society. So when we say outside and above society, that means, first of all, the statement is talking about the post-colonial state. I hope you understand what is a post-colonial state. Post-colonial state is when we say post-colonial state, we are referring to third world countries. We are referring to all those countries which has emerged out of decolonization, which were colonized earlier, and as a result of decolonization, they have become now independent sovereign states, and they are called post-colonial states. They are still living in the colonial hangover. The system which they are following, the state system which they are following, the processes which they are following as far as the state mechanism is concerned, they are still in the colonial hangover, and we call them post-colonial states. So it says that post-colonial state was thought as an entity that stood outside and above society. Outside and above society, that these post-colonial states, the whole concept of state, the way the state exists in third world countries today, it is borrowed from the developed countries. It is borrowed from the colonizers. It has been imposed by the colonizers. It is not something which has organically developed through their society. It is not something which has organically developed out of the society of these third world countries. No. It has been imposed from the outside by the colonizers, and that is being continued today. And in an autonomous manner, it is continuing. It as an autonomous agency. It has not responded to the needs of the people of third world states. This is what modern comparative politics says, that third world countries, the developing countries, the culture is different, the needs is different, the level of economic development is different, level of political development is different. So therefore, you can't have the same system with the same rules and processes which has been followed in the developed states to understand the needs of the developing countries. So it does not respond to, it is not sensitive to the political needs, economic needs, the social needs of the poor countries of the world. This post-colonial state, the entire structure which is borrowed from, which was earlier imposed by the colonizers. The colonizers had imposed a structure in order to govern these colonies with the iron fist. So it was not very sensitive to the needs of the local people. The main objective was to exploit. So that particular system is being continued even till date. In an autonomous manner, above and outside the society, it doesn't reflect the needs of the society. This is what the statement is. So basically, you have to describe here the nature of the post-colonial state in developing countries. How is it not able to address the concerns of the people? How there is a sense of alienation between the people and the state which is ruling them in third world countries, in post-colonial countries. So this is what you have to highlight. So this is basically what you have to highlight. And how can we highlight? We will use viewpoints of scholars. There are viewpoints of scholars which can be used to highlight this. So we shall use the approach which is given by Lucian Pye, political development approach. Lucian Pye has given the political development approach where he talks about political development. What is political development in a state, in a political system? He says political development can be defined in terms with the help of three variables, that is equality, capacity, and differentiation. How much equality is there in terms of equal participation in the government policy making? How much capacity the state has to implement the government policies, and how much differentiation is there in terms of different branches of the government, which is legislature, executive, and judiciary. So if the equality is also there, the capacity is also very good. If the differentiation is also perfect, we can say that particular political system has achieved the highest stage of political development. And if it is not there, obviously, then we can say that they haven't reached they still are at a nascent stage of political development. So this is the political development approach which is given by Lucian Pye. Now this we can use to understand the nature of the post-colonial state in third world countries, and we can use the viewpoints of different scholars to understand this. So for example, the best scholar to help us understand this is the Pakistan-based Marxist scholar Hamza Alawi. Hamza Alawi has given the concept of overdeveloped state. Concept of overdeveloped state. She has highlighted that how the colonial state, the state which is still in the colonial hangover in third world countries, is over-bureaucratized, over-centralized. There is a lot of they rule with the iron fist and do not address the needs of the people. There's no decentralization, no accountability, no transparency. And the needs of the third world, the needs of the people of the post-colonial states are not addressed. There's a disconnect. The state mechanism is very modern. State mechanism is very developed. It is a replica of the Western countries. But there is a disconnect among the between the state mechanism and the needs and the concerns of the people. This is what Hamza Alawi says. Overdeveloped state concept. This can be used in the answer to describe to highlight what is being mentioned in the quotation. Then Riggs has given the concept of development trap. Development trap is, in fact, he's given two concepts, development trap and prismatic societies. Development trap means when these three variables, when they do not progress at the same pace, they do not equally progress, equality, capacity, and differentiation in a state, then we can call it development trap. And this is something which is very much visible in third world countries. There may be a case that the capacity of the state is there. That means the state is ruling with the iron fist. They are able to implement the policies, even though the policies are harsh and unfair. But the people doesn't have the say. The differentiation may not be there. Judiciary may not be independent. So this is what we see in third world countries. So Riggs has given the concept of prismatic societies also, that how these third world countries, these post-colonial states, the developing countries, how they are not, you will find both features. They will find features of modernity and traditional features in the society coexisting together. So their very peculiar nature of societies are there. So therefore you need a very sensitive state, very sensitive political system to deal with all the diverse needs, which is not done by the post-colonial state. Almond Verba's approach of political culture can be used in order to describe the post-colonial state. Almond Verba has described three types of political culture: parochial, subject, and participant. Parochial is where the people have no role in decision making and even have no role in the output function. That is, when the policies are applied on the people, implemented, there is no feedback mechanism where people can protest or people can object or give a feedback. Subject culture is where people have no role in policy making, but the people do play a role in how they react to the implementation of policies. And participant culture is where people have role both in policy making and also they also react to when policy is implemented. They also give a feedback to the system, whether they like it or not, whether they need some changes. That is also listened to and adhered to. So these are the three kind of political culture approach can be used to understand post-colonial state. So in post-colonial states, what do we see? In majority of the post-colonial states, there is only parochial culture. That is when people have no role. Overdeveloped state. The state is ruling with the iron fist. People have no role. In certain third world post-colonial states, we at least see subject culture, but participant culture is absolutely you would find it very, very rarely in post-colonial states. Almond Verba says the best is civic culture, which is a combination of all three. But this combination of all three probably is is very much visible in the developed countries, but we do not see competition in the developing countries, poor countries, the post-colonial states. The democracy, the state development, political modernization is at a very nascent level, and therefore we see more of parochial and subject culture and less of a participant culture. So this is how you can use concepts of comparative politics and concepts given by these scholars to help explain how post-colonial state is a concept which is a post-colonial state is something which has been borrowed and imposed by the colonial masters in the past and is continuing till date without addressing the needs of the society, without addressing the needs and the demands of the society of post-colonial states, the people of post-colonial states. That disconnect is there. The state is functioning autonomously without being sensitive to the needs of the people. So to highlight this in your answer, you have to use all these scholars and their concepts, and that is how you can write a very beautiful answer. So this is how you could have attempted this particular question. Now moving on. Discuss the emergence of neorealism and basic tenets. 15 marker, such a straightforward question. I'll move straight to my notes, where anybody who's read my notes would easily be able to attempt the question. Basically, you have to discuss the emergence of neorealism and its basic tenets. So detailed notes are given to the students on neorealism. How neorealism emerged, why it emerged, and what are its basic tenets. This is what you have to mention in your answer here. So neorealism is also known as structural realism, has been given by a scholar called Kenneth Waltz in his book called Theory of International Politics in 1979. Neorealism has made an attempt to develop more scientific version of realism. Kenneth Waltz believed that realism is timeless wisdom. However, he disagreed with the methodology, with the basic assumptions of classical realism given by Hans J. Morgenthau, and neorealism has tried to make it more scientific. In the 1970s, it had emerged. Why it had emerged? Because in the 1970s, we had seen that there was increase of cooperation among two superpowers. The détente phase was there during the 70s and during the Cold War. We saw more cooperation between two superpowers. Classical realism, which believed in inevitable conflict, was not able to explain that. There were question marks over classical realism given by Hans M. Morgenthau. So Kenneth Waltz wrote this book and gave this theory of neorealism to make realism more scientific and also to explain also to enhance the explanation potential of realism. So this is what was done, and what has been the contribution of neorealism as far as international politics is concerned. Neorealism has proposed the idea of anarchical structure of international politics in order to understand the conflictual nature of international politics, whereas classical realism was based upon the concept of human nature. It was developed on the concept of human nature, but neorealism has been developed on the basis of an anarchical structure of international politics. That in the character of the basic structure, the nature of the structure of international politics is anarchical. Anarchy is the basic feature, and that leads to conflict in international politics. So it has replaced the human nature assumption with the anarchy. That is what it has done. The biggest achievement of neorealism is the identification of systemic forces, which is perhaps the single most greatest contribution of neorealism to theory of international relations. You must be wondering, what are the systemic forces? So neorealism has replaced classical realism. Classical realism was based on human nature concept. Neorealism says no, it is the system, the international system. When you look at international system, structure of the international system is anarchic in nature. And anarchy has many, many implications. And though that is what dictates or determines state behavior rather than human nature. So this is the most important contribution of neorealism, identification of systemic forces. It has also described what is the characteristics of international system. It says it has three characteristics. The ordering principle of the system, it says domestic political system has the ordering principle of hierarchy, whereas international political system has ordering principle of anarchy. Second, it says character of the unit. Basically, in these three characteristics, Kenneth Waltz tries to differentiate between domestic political system and international political system. Because the entire theory of neorealism is built on how international political system operates, and because the structure of the international political system is anarchic, therefore, in international political system, we see power struggle, we see conflict, we see power-seeking behavior. Whereas classical realism had given the same conclusions, but on the basis of human nature assumption. So it has basically changed the assumption. So it says international system is different from domestic political system because of the ordering principle. Ordering principle in international system is anarchy. In domestic political system is a human nature. As far as the character of the unit in the system is concerned, Walt says, in international politics, the unit is the state, and state is functionally similar. All states basically try to maximize power, basically try to achieve the national interest and the national security of the country, safeguard national interest and national security of the country. However, distribution of capabilities does exist. Differentiation of capabilities, and here they do differentiate that international system units are functionally similar, but in domestic political system units play different role. The legislature have the legislative function to perform, forms laws, executive implements laws and policies, and judiciary do dispute adjudication. So, but that is not true for international system. Their units are, functionally similar. That is what. So these are basically three characteristics of international political system given by Kenneth Waltz. Third is that a distribution of capabilities is there. That means functionally states in the world are similar, but in terms of their capabilities, they differ with each other. There may be a state which may be more powerful to fulfill its objectives. There may be states which may be lesser powerful to fulfill their objectives. On the basis of this differentiation, we can categorize states into categories as great and small powers. We can also, on the basis of number of great powers, we can also determine the nature of international system, unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar. So this is what the three characteristics of international system is as described by Kenneth Waltz. Then they have also given, neorealism has also given neorealist stability theory, claiming that the bipolar systems are more stable as compared to unipolar and multipolar. And here we must also quote another prominent neorealist scholar, John Mearsheimer, who is an offensive realist. Further, in the answer, we should also highlight anarchy and its implications. What are implications of anarchy? What are those systemic forces which are affecting world politics? So anarchy has these implications. It creates a system of self-help. It creates an environment of security dilemma, which has been defined by Ken Booth and Nicholas Wheeler, which can be mentioned in our answers. And also, the anarchy leads to such an international system where all states, they believe in the concept of relative gains rather than absolute gains. Relative gains means they believe in a zero-sum approach rather than non-zero-sum approach. My gain should be exactly equal to the loss of the other. Fine. So this is the implications of anarchy, 3 implications of anarchy, which can be explained in the answer. And finally, defensive and offensive neorealism. So this is what the whole, basically, very quickly, I've tried to summarize entire neorealism for you, that what are the points which you could have used in this particular question, which are all there in our notes, that what is neorealism, how did it emerge, why did it emerge, what problem it tried to address. It tried to address the unscientific nature of classical realism, which was based on the human nature principle. It was based on the neorealism tried to make it more scientific. It tried to explain the structure of international system, which is anarchy and its implications. Then how it has described international system. It has given 3 characteristics: neorealist stability theory, bipolar international systems are more stable, and then offensive and defensive neorealism. So this is how you can easily attempt this particular question. Very easy, very straightforward question. Could have been easily attempted by reading our notes. Then the 2C, what is complex interdependence? This question has 2 parts. What is complex interdependence? Discuss the role of transnational actors in the international system. It's a challenging task. This question is challenging. Why? Not because it is difficult. It is not at all difficult. Question is very straightforward. In the question, 2 things have been asked. What is complex interdependence? You have to describe what is complex interdependence. And then the second part of the question is discuss the role of transnational actors. Now, these are 2 different topics in the syllabus which have been asked in the same question. So highlight what is complex interdependence, also highlight role of transnational actors in the given word limit. Word limit is 200 to 250 words. It's a 15 marker. So summarizing everything is going to be the challenge. Question is easy. Summarizing everything is going to be the challenge. So without wasting any words or any space, we have to hit the nail on the head. we have to hit the nail on the head. We have to start discussing what is complex interdependence. Complex interdependence model is a liberal model in international relations, which has been given by Joseph Nye and Robert Keown. This particular model helps us understand the nature of post-Cold War world. Again, my notes. Everything was in the notes. Everything is there. This can be used to attempt this particular question. It can help understand. It describes post-Cold War era world order given by Robert Keown and Joseph Nye. This complex interdependence model talks about low politics and high politics, that states traditionally have been more concerned about high politics, which is issues related to security and survival of the state, and have not been giving a lot of attention to low politics, which are issues related to economics, social welfare of the people. But they say that in the post-Cold War era, nature of world politics have changed. Nature of world politics have changed, and today's states, they concentrate more on low politics as compared to high politics. That means economic issues, social welfare issues have become more important to states of the world. And why this has happened? Why this has happened? This is the entire table which was given to you in the notes, that this table could have been used, that how is complex interdependence different from realism? Just we discussed realism, the mainstream IR theory. Complex interdependence is a liberal IR concept. How is this? The liberals, they say world has changed. How the world has, they say that it is not just basic interdependence, that economically states have become interdependent, which also is a concept given by a liberal scholar called Richard Rosecrane. So they say it's not just basic interdependence. Interdependence is there, but it is complex interdependence, because there are so many different ways in which today countries are interdependent and tied to each other, politically, economically, security-wise. Why? They say, first of all, multiple actors have emerged in the world. That is role of transnational actors, MNCs, NGOs, terrorist organizations. This also is part of the question, which we will highlight later also. And then anarchy, realism oversimplifies anarchy. Anarchy is not according to the complex interdependence, anarchy is not the only way through which you can understand today's world politics. Anarchy model given by neorealism is state-centric model, whereas today's international politics can be understood with the help of John Burton's Cobb-Webb model. Then military force today is less useful as compared to economic and institutional instruments. Military security is less important as compared to welfare issues. The complex interdependence scholar says that the idea of security has become multidimensional. It is not about military security anymore. High politics issues is not the only priority for states anymore. The idea of security has become multidimensional. Security today is, a multidimensional concept. Economic security, political security, cultural security, ecological security, military security, all are part of the concept of security. So today's states pursue multidimensional idea of security rather than just military security narrative. So this is how they say the world has changed, and that is why they say that today when we see a love-hate relationship between nations. Today the world system is such that states are forced to love each other even though they would want to hate each other. Why? Because there are global threats, there are global challenges. Climate change, terrorism, these are global challenges for which the countries, even if they are not in agreement with each other, they still have to come together to combat these global challenges. And cooperation is being done. So multilateral cooperation we do see in the world today in order to combat global challenges, in order to combat global problems. So that is why they say that there is, and also because, the economic interdependence is as also there. For example, you take the example of US and China. China is US's largest trading partner. Even though they are rivals, but they are also largest trading partners. So this must be highlighted. So this is what complex interdependence approach says. It says that today world is not driven by the zero-sum game approach. It's not zero-sum anymore. So this is what complex interdependence says. In summary, in fact, this summary is also given in the notes. In summary, you can say under complex interdependence, transnational actors are increasingly important. Military force is less useful instrument. Welfare, not security, is becoming primary goal and concern of states. This means a world of more cooperative international relations. So this is how you can summarize the entire topic. And this next part of the question is transnational actors. This is what complex interdependence also says. Complex interdependence also says that the role of transnational actors have increased. These transnational actors are also known as non-state actors in international politics. Because in the syllabus it's mentioned transnational actors, that is why, we use this term more often. but they are also known as non-state actors. Role of non-state actors have increased. Which are all those theories in international relations which says that role of non-state actors have increased? Realists do not recognize the role of non-state actors. They do not. We have to quote these theories in our answers to make answers academically rich. Realists do not recognize the role of non-state actors because realists believe in a state-centric description of world politics. Whereas the liberal approaches, they do recognize the role of transnational actors, non-state actors. Cobweb model, John Burton, complex interdependence model, 3D chessboard model given by Joseph Nye, sociological liberalism given by Karl Dutch. These are the models which do recognize the role of non-state actors, transnational actors, and then the Marxists also. But Marxists, they have a negative view of especially multinational corporations, transnational corporations. They say because of multinational corporations, drain of wealth is happening from the periphery to the core. And the feminist scholars, they share the same view as the Marxists. They also have a negative picture of multinational corporations especially. So this is how you can, in a small paragraph, you can mention which are those theories who highlight role of transnational actors in IR and the ones who don't or doesn't agree. So this is how you can start, and then very briefly we can highlight the role of transnational corporations or multinational corporations have increased immensely because of their sheer size. Today, you can give these examples which were given to you in the notes. General Motors is broadly equivalent to the GDP of Denmark. Walmart is the same size as GDP of Poland. ExxonMobil has the same economic size as of the economy of South America. Apple is the first $1 trillion company of the world. Market capitalization of Apple today is $3 trillion. Compare it with India, $2.7 trillion is our GDP. So because of the sheer economic size of these multinational corporations, their influence on policy making, their influence on foreign policy making has increased. And how this has increased, how it is affecting world politics, these are different points which you can highlight. There's a loss of sovereignty in terms of controlling financial flows, because the MNC's international financial transactions have become so robust that the sovereign state has lost that power, that capacity to control financial flows. FDIs, FIs, they are so fluid. The volatility is so high. Then a triangulation of trade happens. Because of globalization, because of free trade, you will not be able to control the trade. The loss of sovereignty is there also. If you ban trade with a particular country, that particular company may start rerouting the trade from some other country. That also is possible. Regulatory arbitrage is happening. Today, sovereign state is not able to regulate these MNCs because if they do over-regulation, the MNCs, they relocate their manufacturing facilities. The foreign investment goes away, which no state today wants, because all states today the growth model is dependent on foreign investments. So these are certain points which can be highlighted. Domestic deregulation is happening, which is being replaced by global re-regulation. Today, in the domestic political system, the sovereign state is not able to regulate these MNCs, but their global re-regulation is coming. For example, you have Basel norms for banking system. Recently, it was decided by the countries of the world that they will charge 15% corporate tax on MNCs. So, the sovereign state is losing the hold over the system which it used to have because of this MNCs. And then also there are the liberals support this. They say MNCs bring capital, create employment, facilitate transfer of technology from the developed world to third world countries. Whereas the Marxists criticize their role. They say MNCs lead to drain of wealth. So that is something which you can be highlighting. Then NGOs are the global civil society. Give examples: Amnesty International, Red Cross, they've even got Nobel Peace Prizes. Also talk about advocacy networks, that is a coalition of NGOs demanding certainly, fulfilling the function of interest aggregation at the interest articulation at the international level. Then how ECOSOC, UN organ ECOSOC recognizes and consults NGOs. That can be highlighted as the role of NGOs in international politics. Then the realist view, does not agree with the role of NGOs. Marxists consider that NGOs are an extension of MNCs only, because MNCs, they finance NGOs through corporate social responsibility funds. And then also the liberal view. Liberals, they support NGOs, especially the sociological liberalism given by Karl Dutch. They do support 3D chessboard model given by Joseph Nye. Then P.J. Simmons have elaborated what is the impact of NGOs. setting the agenda, negotiating outcome, conferring legitimacy, implementing solutions, and Finmore and Sikik has say NGOs play a role of norm entrepreneurs in the world. So all these main points which are highlighted in my notes, which could be used, just the main points in the answer, not the entire description. Then the transnational terrorist networks, they have emerged. Terrorism has emerged as a global challenge, especially after 9/11 terror attacks. We have seen a rise of global terrorism, new terrorism, and this has become the biggest global security threat. And this has been the spread of transnational terrorist networks have been facilitated by globalization. Globalization has made it easier for criminals to, run their operations all over the world. Today, terrorist networks are spread over a wide geographical area. Their scale has increased. This has happened because of forces of globalization. Improvements in communications have made it much easier to transfer people, money, weapons, and ideas on a transnational basis. And this is the dark side of globalization. Globalization has assisted the growth of transnational terrorist networks also, which has become the biggest global security threat, and the international relations theory is responding to it. We have a new concept of asymmetrical balancing, preemptive wars, rogue state concept, these concepts have been developed in order to deal with terrorism. John Lewis Gardis, scholar can be quoted, has talked about terrorism, that how it will affect US security in the future, and he calls them as asymmetrical actors. Then also, UN Security Council 1267 Sanctions Committee has been formed to deal with the problem of terrorism and the viewpoint of Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky has argued that today it has become part of foreign policy that states have started sponsoring terrorist organizations. Biggest example in case of ours is Pakistan. Pakistan sponsoring anti-India terrorist organizations. So, this is how you can highlight the role. So, yes, I know it is challenging. In this question, there were two different things: complex interdependence, role of transnational actors. You have to do this. You have to write only the most important points, the way it was been highlighted in bold letters in the notes. That is what you have to do in order to write a good answer. You don't have to do detailed description at all. You have to only highlight the main point. That is what you have to do. Then 3A, explain the impact of electoral systems and cleavages in shaping party systems with reference to developing countries. So again a question from comparative politics, and again a simple question, that is how electoral systems, they affect how they play a role in shaping party system in developing countries. So in this particular question, you have to highlight two things. First is how electoral systems have impact on party systems in countries. And second part of the question is, you have to also highlight the nature of party systems, political parties in developing countries. What are the kind of political parties which do develop in developing countries? This is something which you have to highlight as far as this particular question is concerned. So first is, what are different types of political electoral systems? So broadly, there are two categories of electoral system. One is majoritarian, second is proportional. Majoritarian would include, I hope you know what are electoral systems. Electoral system is what method is followed for voting and electing representatives in a democracy. So what method is followed? There can be two broad categories of methods, electoral systems, majoritarian and proportional. Majoritarian would include a simple majority system, first past the post system. Then you also have a second ballot system, alternative vote system. In the proportional system, you have single transferable vote system. You have list system. So these are different electoral systems, and they do have an effect on party system of a country. They do have an effect. For example, it has been suggested that if there is a proportional representation system followed, there's a possibility that there are going to be multi-party system. In fact, India is an exception to that. Then if there is a majoritarian system, like it is there in US, it is there in UK, then it is there, and especially in UK, you find a majoritarian system. That in that particular system, it is suggested that it would lead to a two-party system. So this is how electoral systems, they affect party systems. So this is something which has to be highlighted in this particular question. And secondly is nature of political parties in developing countries. So what is the nature of political parties in developing countries? The nature of political parties in developing countries, the political parties are very modern. They are very bureaucratic, but they have that disconnect with the people. Political parties in developing countries, they lack internal democracy. They are financially not accountable. They, are run by dynasties. Family rule is there. And there is over bureaucratization as far as political parties are concerned, but the disconnect with the people is there. So these are certain features of political parties in developing countries which can be highlighted, and there are also more. So it's a very straightforward question. This is how you can attempt this particular question. Again, from the comparative politics syllabus, this question was asked. Okay. Now moving on to the next one, which is 3B, which is what is globalization? Why is there an intense debate about globalization and its consequences? This question has been asked in the exam multiple times. It has been asked multiple times. So many times this question has been asked in the examination. So that is on globalization. It's there in the syllabus in so many different chapters. In 2 to 3 chapters, in fact, more than 2 to 3 chapters, you would find the reference of globalization in the syllabus. So, well, the question is, what is globalization? So basically, first we will define what is globalization and why there is an intense debate about globalization and its consequences. That is, what is the debate of globalization? There are people, scholars who support the idea of globalization, who say globalization has benefited the world. There are scholars, there are viewpoints, there are theories which say globalization has not benefited the world, it has been an exploitative system. So that debate has to be highlighted. First part of the answer is define globalization. Second part of the answer is highlight the debate. That is all. Very simple question. This is what you have to do in this particular question. And again, with the help of our notes, you could have easily attempted this, because in the notes elaborate definitions and everything was given. That this is the document on globalization which is circulated with our students and it's discussed in the classes. The basic definition of globalization in simple words is, it is an ongoing process of international economic and technological integration made possible by advances in transportation and communication. It has become the buzzword. Then you can quote all these different scholars who had given different narratives on globalization, who have described globalization in different ways. David Harvey says globalization can be described as time-space compression. Robert Gilpin says globalization can be described as integration of world economy. Jan Art Schultz says globalization can be described as deterritorialization or growth of supra-territorial relations among people. Kenji Ohame says globalization is borderless world. Marshall McLuhan says globalization is global village, represents global village. And Thomas Friedman says globalization is inexorable integration of markets, nation states, technology to a degree never witnessed before. So many different ways globalization can be described. So many different scholars have been given the notes. You could have used, it's not necessary that you have to remember all of them. Even if you have used even 2 to 3 out of these 6 to 7, it's more than enough. It would make your answer beautiful. And also, what are the features of globalization? Globalization today has significance because it is reducing the significance of borders and boundaries. Territorial boundaries is losing significance because of globalization. Today we live in a shared social space. That's what globalization has led to. Also, globalization has led to deterritorialization of social, economic and political activity. Earlier, sovereign boundaries, sovereign territory, the territory of the state was a very big barrier. Everything, the billiard balls model given by Arnold Wolfers talk about how the outer shell was impenetrable. The outer shell of the state was impenetrable, but globalization has made that outer shell porous. Today, deterritorialization of social, political and economic activity has happened. Also, denationalization of power. We discussed this in the last question itself. Power, the sovereign power of the state is reducing because of globalization, because of rise of multinational corporations. And also technology has advanced to a degree never witnessed before. Today, individuals, corporations, nations are reaching around the world faster, farther, deeper and cheaper. This is what globalization is. And there are multiple dimensions of globalization. It's not only one dimension. In fact, the most prominent dimension is the economic globalization dimension, but there's cultural globalization, political globalization, military globalization, and also ecological globalization, social globalization. These different dimensions can also be highlighted. Then the waves of globalization are there, but that can be ignored here. The word limit will not allow us, so we will not use this in this answer. Then critics of globalization. Now, the ones who say that globalization is not beneficial for the world. The one who says it is beneficial. The debate, liberals support this. Globalization is a liberal concept. Liberals, they support the idea of globalization and free trade. They say globalization would lead to, the neoliberals, they say the globalization would lead to stability, prosperity, growth, peace in the world. The economic interdependence, complex interdependence model, sociological liberalism, they all support globalization. They all support globalization. And, the Washington Consensus, it supports globalization. Neoliberal economic policies should be followed. Liberalization, privatization, globalization. People like Jagdish Bhagwati, they say globalization facilitates transfer of technology, transfer of capital to the third world states. So they say globalization is good for world progress. But the ones who do not agree with this, who doesn't agree? Marxist, dependency school theorist, Immanuel Wallerstein. World system theory, that globalization has led to drain of wealth from periphery to core. Other dependency school theorists, the Andre Gundo Frank, Samir Amin, all that I've discussed with you already. So they disagree. They say that globalization has not benefited especially the third world countries. Globalization is real but not perfect. It is not perfect. Maximum movement of goods and people is only unidimensional, from the developed to the developing, not to developing countries. The poor countries, they have trade deficit with developed countries. So trade is not, the globalization has encouraged trade, but the trade is not balanced trade. Also, the Marxists, they say that globalization is nothing but global spread of capitalism. It is nothing but global spread of capitalism. And they criticize this, they gave a critical narrative. Justin Rosenberg says a Marxist, globalization serves a self-serving myth, that it is basically, it's a conceptual folly. It is hiding the significance of a Western capitalism. It is basically trying to, Justin Rosenberg says, it is basically trying to put forth and advance the interests of capitalism and US hegemony. Immanuel Wallerstein, I've already discussed with you. Noam Chomsky says that globalization have negative impacts on health, education, nutrition. He's given this viewpoint in the book Profit Over People. Arundhati Roy has criticized globalization. Vandana Shiva has criticized globalization. George Heen and Ramesh Thakur has highlighted the dark side of globalization. So all this debate should be highlighted in the answer. Developing countries, they are more and more concerned about globalization because it has been only one-sided. It has benefited the developed world more. And it has led to problems like religious terrorism, transnational terrorism, increase in human trafficking, increase in ethnic conflicts. In fact, this terrorism angle we just discussed in the previous question. So, and also the latest also must be mentioned. You know, the question was asked this year. So why not also talk about impact of COVID on globalization? Impact of COVID on globalization. This is the latest debate. This must be mentioned in your answer. What is the impact of COVID-19 on globalization? The pandemic, the post-pandemic world economy seems likely to be a far less globalized economy because political leaders and publics are rejecting openness in manner unlike anything seen since the tariff wars of the 1930s. So today, the entire world, instead of outward looking, they have become inward looking, have become more and more conservative because of the pandemic. This will affect globalization. And also the pandemic has greatly crippled supply chain networks. Supply chain networks was the backbone of globalization. They've been crippled, they've been affected by globalization. Supply chains have been disrupted. They have been disrupted, which is leading to a retreat from globalization because of supply chain disruptions, which we have seen in cases, for example, global semiconductor supply chain. Recently, there was a shortage of global semiconductors, which led to the fall in manufacturing of automobile sector in India also. And also this supply chain disruption of the supply chain, this has led to a supply chain shock. This would lead to a supply shock recession. This has also been confirmed by the Wall Street Journal, by scholars like Gordon G. Chang, also Professor Nicholas Lamp. You must quote Professor Nicholas Lamp. Professor Nicholas Lamp has tried to highlight that the new ingredient of globalization is resilience. Resilient supply chain networks must be created in order to have a future of globalization. Resilient supply chain networks are required, where you should have backups. You should not be dependent on one particular supply chain or one particular country for all your supplies. So the resilience has become the new ingredient for globalization. So this must be mentioned in your answers. And all of this was given to our students Impact of COVID on globalization. This debate can be highlighted in this answer. Everybody will write everything else. Everyone is going to write about developing countries. There have been negative impacts of globalization on developing countries. The Marxists have criticized globalization. That's something which everyone is going to write. But this is something which will get you extra marks. Impact of COVID on globalization. These are the points which are the most relevant today in today's context. So this can help you get brownie points. So in the era of globalization, business should be looking for and building more resilient and diverse global supply chains. This is what should be highlighted in the answer. And this resilient supply chain networks, this concept which has been given by people like Professor Nicholas Lamp, has been developed on the basis of this concept, weaponized interdependence, given by Henry Farrell and Abraham Newman. During COVID, this new concept has become very popular. Farrell and Newman has given this concept of weaponized interdependence. That how globalization earlier used to lead to interdependence, but this interdependence has been weaponized because there are only select few countries which are controlling the supply chains of the world. So they have weaponized interdependence in their own favor. Therefore, there's a need of resilient supply chains in the future. Pandemic has helped us learn this lesson. Because pandemic has disrupted supply chains, which has led to a supply shock recession in world economy. The economic growth rates everywhere in the world has plummeted down because of this. So this is how you can highlight this. This is how you can attempt this particular question. So easily could have been done if you had, I'm sure my students, they have easily done this. So now the next question, what is the next question? 3C, critically examine the decline of USA as a hegemon and its implications for the changing international political order. So decline of American hegemony and how it is going to have an impact on changing international political order. Critically examine. Critically examine means look at all the viewpoints, the different narratives which are being given for the future of world order in the light of declining American hegemony. All of them should be reproduced. All of them should be reproduced in your answer. So what are these different? So many different theories in IR which can help us explain the future of world order, which they try to predict future of world order in the light of declining US hegemony. In the light of declining US hegemony. So, there are simple points which can be mentioned in your answers. For example, that, American hegemony is on the decline, which will make the world order more unstable. Which will also mean that, the America, which used to claim that it is the leader of the free world, that responsibility it is not willing to perform anymore. We have seen that in the withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan, which has led to return of Taliban rule in Afghanistan. This is the simple observations which we can make. Also, this has led to weakening of the multilateral system of the world. America has been withdrawing from its responsibilities at level of multilateral organizations. That is something which we are visible. But then also, besides making these observations, how theories can help us understand the future of world order, the implication of decline of American hegemony on world politics. So which theories can help us? Which are those theories, if we use in our answers, is going to impress the examiner, and from the PSIR point of view is going to give us more marks? Power transition theory, the hegemonic stability theory, Thucydides trap, Kindleberger trap given by Joseph Nye. These are theories which can be used to explain the future of world order in the context of declining American hegemony, and also talk about the new Cold War, because American hegemony is declining. And who is challenging American hegemony? China is the biggest rival. Therefore, the new discussion has cropped up. That is a discussion on new Cold War. So this is something which should be mentioned in your answers. And all of this is there in our notes. All of this is there in our notes. Power transition theory can be used. Kenneth Organsky. Kenneth Organsky says that whenever there is a rising power, if there's a rising power, it would be unsatisfied with the hegemonic power. A rising power unsatisfied with the current rules of the game might create conditions which could lead to conflict. So whenever there's a transition, power transition in the world, today that transition is happening. American power is decreasing and there's a rising power, China. So this rising power will challenge American hegemony, and this transition is not going to be peaceful. This would lead to conflict. This is what the power transition theory of Kenneth Organsky is. Kenneth Organsky is a realist. So we can use this realist point of view to understand the global implication of declining American hegemony. Then also using the same point of view, we can also write down about Thucydides trap. Thucydides trap talk is given by Graham Allison. Graham Allison says that whenever there's an established world power and if there's a rising world power challenging the hegemony of the established world power, there's bound to be conflict. There's inevitably the conflict is bound to happen. And he has given Thucydides trap in the context of US-China rivalry in his book called Destined for War, written in the year 2017. Then the hegemonic stability theory. Yes, I was skipping the name of the scholar. Charles Kindleberger. Charles Kindleberger has given the hegemonic stability theory where he says that a dominant military and economic power is necessary to ensure the stability and prosperity of a liberal world economy. For the world economy to be stabilized, there has to be a stabilizer, one stabilizer, and that role of stabilizer was being played by US till date. Now US is refusing to play that role, is withdrawing from its responsibilities. So that hegemonic stability theory says that if you want a liberal world economy to flourish, there should be that stable hegemon should be there to implement liberal rules. That is not happening now because US is not there anymore. US hegemony is reducing, so there is a crisis of the liberal world economy also. And driven from this idea is the Kindleberger trap given by Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye, what is the Kindleberger trap? Kindleberger trap says that the disastrous decade of the 1930s was a result of the US failure to provide global public goods. Global public goods here are the role of stabilizer which the hegemon should perform in order to maintain stable liberal global world order. That is what global public goods is. So US failure to provide global public goods after it had replaced Britain as the leading power in the 1930s was the reason of the economic depression of the 1930s. This is what Kindleberger has said in his hegemonic stability theory. So Joseph Nye says that the same situation is happening now. Today, as China's power grows and US's powers decreases, will it make the same mistake? Will China make the same mistake? Is China in a position to provide those global public goods? Is China in a position to act as a stabilizer for the liberal world economic order or not? Or the liberal world economic order will break down, will run into another crisis because of this. This is the Kindleberger trap. Kindleberger trap. This is given by Joseph Nye. So these different, these theories, these concepts, all of this can be used in order to both Thucydides trap, Kindleberger trap. They highlight the inherent danger in shifting balance of power in the world today. These can be used. Obviously, you will write those normal points, which commonsensical points of consequences of declining American hegemony that everybody is going to write. But in the given time, I have this, this problem that I have to keep the video as short as possible. In the given time, I'm only trying to tell you the most important things, that these are the theories and concepts in IR, which you could have used in your answer in this particular question. That is how you are good. That is how you get 330 out of 500. As far as the PSIR optional is concerned. You have to stand out of the crowd by using these concepts and given in the recent context to write IR answers in the optional paper. Then also New Cold War, rise of Chinese dragon, emergence of a stronger and a more assertive China, which is challenging American hegemony. This whole debate on New Cold War must be highlighted in the answer. And also the recent developments, you can give examples of Quad, AUKUS, how Joe Biden administration is trying to take forward the containment strategy against China, which was launched by Donald Trump in his trade wars. When he had started during Donald Trump's presidency, the trade war had been initiated between China and US, and that is when we started talking about America's containment strategy against China. So that is being taken forward. Indo-Pacific has become the new theater of geopolitical tussle between China and US. This should be highlighted. Then there are perspectives. John Mearsheimer, realist perspective on New Cold War. He talks about inevitable rivalry between US and China. He also highlights that it was USA's folly that during the 90s, USA had followed an approach of engagement with China and therefore let China grow as a competitor of US. This is something which John Mearsheimer says, this is something which USA should have never done. He says there is no such example in the world where a leader has engaged with his competitor and has allowed the competitor to emerge to a level where its own power is being challenged today. So this is something with realist perspective. John Mearsheimer, in fact, recently wrote an article, Inevitable Rivalry, America, China, and the Tragedy of Great Power Politics, written in 2021, last year, where he's talked about New Cold War. So that viewpoint was there in our notes, could have been highlighted here. Also, new Cold War is going to be much more balanced Cold War. It is not going to be like the previous Cold War, where US was certainly much more powerful than Soviet Union. Professor Rajesh Rajagopalan says that China is the new economic powerhouse. In fact, this was something which was asked in the GS paper also this time, that in the new Cold War, GS paper 2, that China is going to be different from as compared to the previous Soviet Union. So this is what Rajesh Rajagopalan says. China is a new economic and technological powerhouse. China is integrated into the global economy. China has a more productive economy as compared to Soviet Union. So US today has a much more formidable rival to fight with. It's not, China is not Soviet Union. China is the second largest economy in the world today, very soon going to overtake American economy and become the largest economy of the world. So China is going to be a much more formidable, opponent for USA. So this new Cold War is going to be more balanced, and India is caught in between. The realist perspective says India is caught in between. Rajesh Rajagopalan, Professor Rajesh Rajagopalan, a realist scholar in India, says that India is in a catch-22 situation. We are not in that Soviet era where we had the Soviet card always to display in front of the Americans. Here, we are right now in a territorial conflict with China. China is becoming more and more aggressive on our borders. Therefore, we have no other choice but to align with US, and we can get caught up in the US-China rivalry, which may affect India's interests adversely in the future. Rajesh Rajagopalan says, India should realize that India should get out of its multipolar fantasy, because the world is becoming bipolar in terms of US-China rivalry. This is what Rajesh Rajagopalan has to say. So just 2-3 lines on how this is going to affect India, that also should be mentioned in your answer. So if you could have attempted this answer in this manner, using all these scholars, using all these different theories, it would make a beautiful, excellent answer, academically very rich answer, which will help you. That's how you get marks in paper 2. A lot of students have this query that paper 1 is easy, but paper 2 is complicated. We don't get many marks, because in paper 2, students, they write GS answers. They write GS answers. You don't have to write GS answers. You have to write PSIR answers. For that, you'll have to use all these theories and concepts, which we will never use in the GS paper, to write the answer in as far as PSIR is concerned. So this is something which you should address. So now let us discuss 4A. The 4A question is, modernization thesis asserts that affluence breeds stable democracy. How do you explain the success of India being the world's largest democracy as an exceptional case? So in this particular case, we have to discuss that it's basically a very good question. And I would again say, syllabus of the both papers, paper 1, paper 2, or it's an interdisciplinary question which is related to paper 1 syllabus, paper 2 syllabus, and everything has been clubbed together, and this question has been formed and it has been asked in paper 2. So in this particular question, basically the examiner is saying that affluence, only countries which are economically affluent, which are countries which have influence in the world, countries which have seen economic growth, modernization theory says that only in such countries stable democracies is possible. But India has become the largest democracy of the world, is a stable democracy. Without this affluence, this has been possible in India. So India is an exceptional case in that case. How do you explain this? How do you explain this? So this is what you have to, they've asked you a puzzle. That it's very puzzling to us that if we go by modernization theory, only an affluent country should be a stable democracy. India is not, but it still has become a stable democracy. How has this happened? You have to explain this. So again, we can explain this with the help of scholars. With the help of scholars, with their viewpoints. So first of all, explain that modernization thesis. This has been given by Lipset. Lipset has given three indicators of a country's development towards democracy. Which are these three indicators? Wealth, education, and industrialization. According to Lipset, if there's a functional interdependence between these three indicators, that means if these three indicators in an organic format, if they grow in a particular country becomes wealthy, education facilities are there, industrialization base is there, and all these three things, in a synergy going together, can help country become a stable democracy, can help country develop into a stable democracy. But all these three has not happened in our country. People of our country are not wealthy, not all of them. Education facilities are still not sufficient. Industrialization base is also not there. We are not a manufacturing economy of the world. Services sector is there, but in terms of our secondary manufacturing sector industry, that has not flourished. So still India has become a stable democracy. This is the thesis which you have to mention in your introductory paragraph, that this is what Lipset says, but this is what has not happened in India. These three indicators have not been there. These three indicators are not there in adequate amount. We are still trying to develop all these three. But still India has become a stable democracy, not since today, not just in 21st century. India has been a stable democracy since its birth. So how this has happened, how India has achieved this? So you have to describe the nature of Indian democracy. India is more of a procedural democracy rather than a substantive democracy. We have democratic procedures very well followed in our country, in India, but it's not a substantive democracy in terms of inculcating the democratic attitude, having the democratic culture in the country, and people enjoying the status of participatory democracy. That is not there. It is more of like we discussed in one of our previous questions, it is more of a parochial and subject political culture, but not participant political culture. So India is not a substantive democracy. All aspects of democracy is not there. Yes, political civil rights are there, but social economic rights are not there. India is only democracy in terms of procedure. So it's more of a procedural democracy rather than substantive democracy. This is exactly what Ambedkar had said. You must quote Ambedkar. Ambedkar had said democracy is not possible without social and economic rights. Only political and civil rights is not going to lead to real form of democracy. Rajni Kothari has explained this. Rajni Kothari had said that the Congress system of the 50s and the 60s and the initial democratic outlook of the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru played a major role in creating this, in building the democratic credentials of India. So Rajni Kothari explains how this has become a stable democracy. Then also we must use the viewpoint of Arend Lijpahat. Arend Lijpahat says that as far as Indian democracy is concerned, he says Indian democracy is more of a consociational democracy. How consociational democracy? Consociational democracy means that we see a coalition, a consensus among the elites which have made India a stable democracy. He says there is cooperation among the elites, and there is also, we see, coalition of forces which has made India a consociational democracy rather than a substantive democracy. So the viewpoint of Arend Lijpahat also can be used. Atul Kohli has described that India, even though India is a democracy, but it has been facing a crisis of governability. So Indian democracy, yes, it's a stable democracy, but what is the nature of democracy? The nature of democracy is not what the modernization thesis says. These are the problems with Indian democracy. You can quote all these scholars, Ambedkar, Rajni Kothari, Arend Lijpahat, and Atul Kohli. India is a procedural democracy, whereas the modernization thesis, the Lipset says that if you have wealth, education, and industrialization, and its functional interdependence between all these three indicators, then a country can become into a stable democracy, develop into a semi-stable democracy. The basic thesis, the basic assumption of Lipset is that he's trying to say that if the people are wealthy, and empowered, then they are inclined to play a more responsible role in the democracy and act as responsible citizens and a more participative role in a democracy. Wealthy, educated citizens are bound to do that, and they would also have the capacity to exercise self-restraint, which is required in order to avoid, in order to ensure that the citizens do not fall into the trap of demagogues and also, a-democratic movements in the country. So that is only going to happen if the people are wealthy and educated. That has not been in the case of India, but still it has been a democracy. Why? Because Indian democracy is more of a procedural democracy rather than a substantive democracy. We are going through the transition. We are trying to move towards substantive democracy by ensuring welfare policies, by ensuring that we also have provide social and economic rights to people, which are enshrined in the DPSPs of the Constitution. So we are trying to do that. We are moving towards that path. So slowly, steadily, we are moving towards that particular path. But that is how you can describe this. That is how you can attempt this particular question, by using the viewpoints of all these scholars. This is what this question meant. Moving on to the next question now. Explain success of ASEAN as a regional organization. Such a simple question asked multiple times. Now, beauty of PSIR optional is that questions are repeated again and again. Repeated again and again. So many times this question has been asked, that why is ASEAN successful? Explain its success. Explain, describe its success. That is what you have to do. So ASEAN, and again I would like to show you the notes which were circulated among the students on ASEAN, which can help you answer this particular question so easily. The motto of ASEAN, one vision, one identity, one community. Organization was formed in 1967 as a result of the Bangkok Declaration. Has been one of, and which are the members? Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, Brunei. It's a 10-member organization. Jakarta is the headquarters. These are the facts. You can mention these facts in just the introductory paragraph. That is all. And then you have to talk about the success, achievements of ASEAN. So when you look at the achievements of ASEAN, if we look at this, if we look at the evolution of ASEAN, we will find out many achievements are there. So in the notes, I had given evolution of ASEAN to my students. So in 71, ASEAN countries declared them as zone of peace, friendship and neutrality, ZOPFAN. This was done in order to discourage arms race in Southeast Asia. In 76, they signed Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with each other, again for the peace and stability of the region. In 77, ASEAN countries signed a PTA, Preferential Trade Agreement. In 92, they signed a Free Trade Agreement with each other, which has still not been achieved in case of SAARC. SAARC, the FTA has been, SAFTA has been signed but has not been implemented. But ASEAN today but is a free trade area. Also, ASEAN has declared itself as a nuclear weapons free zone. Again, speaks volumes about the regional integration, regional cooperation and the stability which it has brought in Southeast Asian countries. And in the year 1997, they had set up a vision document for itself that by the year 2015, they are going to adopt, they're going to achieve their goals of becoming a ASEAN community. And that is exactly what has happened. In 2008, they were able to adopt a charter for itself. ASEAN charter they adopted, which has all the rules and procedures regarding the organization, which still has not been done in organizations like EU. And 2015, ASEAN was able to declare itself as ASEAN Community. ASEAN Community has been formed, which is based on 3 pillars. ASEAN Political Security Community, Economic Community, Social Cultural Community. In 2016, they adopted Master Plan for ASEAN Connectivity with the target of 2025 that they're going to develop connectivity in the region, Southeast Asia, and target is 2025. So on connectivity also they have been working. And then also recently in 2019 they adopted an outlook on Indo-Pacific, a common outlook on Indo-Pacific. They have come out with their position on Indo-Pacific. They say that the centrality of ASEAN should be highlighted here. And they talk about a rule-based order anchored upon international law, openness, transparency, inclusivity, and commitment to advancing economic engagement in the region. Don't you think this is so similar to what India's vision of Indo-Pacific is, which was highlighted by Prime Minister Modi in the Shangri-La dialogue? So this is also an important point that ASEAN's vision of Indo-Pacific and India's vision of Indo-Pacific has parallels. So this is what they have achieved. This is what they have achieved. And obviously all this is not what has been asked. So, these are the achievements of ASEAN. Now, let's also use describe the success. So, ASEAN is seen as the most successful regional organization among the third world countries. It is seen as the benchmark standard for regional integration, regional cooperation, multilateral cooperation in the third world, among the third world countries. EU is the gold standard for regional cooperation in developed countries, ASEAN in the developing countries. And as a matter of fact, the worst example of regional integration in developing countries is SAARC. So ASEAN is so much better than SAARC. Decisions in ASEAN are taken on basis of consensus. So it doesn't have that supranational features which EU has, a common central bank, a common parliament, a common judicial court. That is not there in ASEAN. So ASEAN has followed a more flexible model towards regional integration and cooperation. Kishore, we must quote Kishore Mahbubani here. He wrote this book, ASEAN Miracle, where he has described the tremendous success of ASEAN. He says ASEAN is an example of pragmatic regionalism. ASEAN has followed its own way towards regional integration. It has not copied somebody else. It has not copied what EU has done. ASEAN, he says, is a very diverse region, very diverse region. There are 240 million Muslims, 120 million Christians, 150 million Buddhists, and also other minorities like Hindus. Despite all this diversity, they have achieved regional integration. There is income disparity also. Singapore's per capita income is around $50,000, whereas Laos per capita income is $1,353 US. So there's income disparity as well. Still, they have achieved regional integration. In terms of population, Indonesia has 261 million population. Brunei has only 450,000 population. So there is great regional disparity, income disparity, population disparity. Despite this diversity of the region, we see regional disparities, income regional disparities. We see, as far as this thing, population, there is again disparity. There are very highly populated countries like Indonesia, and there are very small countries also in terms of population. And diversity in terms of different communities, that is there. Mahbubani says, despite all these diversities and disparities, still they have achieved integration. And in the past, it was also a theater of instability. During Cold War, Vietnam War happened here. It also has problems like human trafficking and organized crime. Still, ASEAN has achieved regional integration, and it has become the 5th largest market of the world. ASEAN is based on the principle of Musyawarah and Mufakat, deliberation and consensus. And that is how they have achieved their integration. It's a success story. It is definitely a success story. Recently, ASEAN has also signed a free trade agreement with countries like China, Australia, known as RCEP. That also can be mentioned in the answers. So all this viewpoint of Mahbubani, and if you compare it with SAARC, SAARC has no comparison. SAARC is a failure. But ASEAN is a success story as far as the regional integration of Southeast Asia is concerned. So all this can be mentioned. Challenges is not something which we can highlight here because that's not been in the question. It has been mentioned that you have to discuss the success, explain the success. So the word limit will not allow us to also mention the challenges. If it was comment, critically analyze, then we could have used the challenges also, but it's only asking an explanation, so we can avoid that. So this is how you can attempt this question. Easily you could have attempted with the help of these notes which are given to the students, so and discussed also in the classes. So that is how this question could have been attempted. Then the last question of section A, explain India's relations with the EU in the context of Brexit. Since last 2-3 years, continuously I've been teaching my students. We've been discussing this topic in the class. Impact of Brexit on India, impact of Brexit on India, impact of Brexit on India. And finally it comes in the question paper this year, that India-EU relations in context of Brexit. So basically we have to describe what is India-EU relations, and then we have to describe the impact of Brexit on India. Again, there it was given to in the notes to all my students. It was there. So India and EU. So this document, this notes, these were circulated among our students, and this can be easily, used to attempt this particular question. So first of all, we have to describe India-EU relations. India and EU, they've had a very special friendly relationship with each other. How? We describe that. EU and India have been having annual summits since 2000. In the 5th annual summit in the year 2004, India-EU relationship was upgraded to strategic partnership. In 2005, they adopted a joint action plan in order to enhance cooperation, consultation, and dialogue between these two regions. India and EU also have similar views on global challenges, climate change, like climate change and terrorism. On climate change, they have cooperated. They both had similar positions on Paris Climate Agreement, played an important role in the signing of Paris Climate Agreement. India and France jointly launched International Solar Alliance. France, Germany, and UK, the 3 members, which UK was part of EU earlier, now it is not there, but when they were there, all these 3 were the strongest supporters of India's demand to become the permanent seat of India to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Also recently, EU very recently has released its strategy on Indo-Pacific. The document is called EU Strategy for Cooperation in Indo-Pacific Council Conclusions. This document has been recently released. In this document also we see parallels between India and EU. EU has supported regional stability, security, prosperity, and sustainable development in Indo-Pacific. The strategy has followed the Quad line. Quad line is free, open, and secure maritime routes. A rule-based international order, upholding democratic values, and highlighting ASEAN's centrality in Indo-Pacific. This is what Quad countries also believe in. This is what India also believes in. This is also what India's Indo-Pacific policy says. So there are parallels between India, EU, Indo-Pacific policy also, so they can cooperate further on this particular issue. Trade picture has been tremendous. EU is India's 3rd largest trading partner. India is EU's 10th largest trading partner. Trade between EU and India has increased by 12.5% in the last 1 decade. Trade in services have also been quite robust. For FDI investments of EU in India amounts to $75.8 billion, very robust. 6,000 European companies are present in India who have created 5 million jobs in India. Indian companies have invested around 50 billion euros in 15 billion euros in EU. In fact, all these figures which I've mentioned, they are all in euros. As mentioned in my handout, they are not in dollars, they are in euros because euro is the currency of EU. So the trade picture has been tremendous. But the problem also is there. The problem is that EU-India free trade agreement has not been signed. They wanted to sign it. Negotiations had started in 2007, got suspended in 2013. EU-India FTA is called Bilateral Trade and Investing Agreement, BTIA. They have not been able to sign it. Why? Because, there are differences. EU wants India to liberalize its wine sector, automobile sector, dairy sector. India is not willing to do that. And EU has not given India data secure country status, which cripples India's capability to trade in EU in terms of services sector, in terms of especially the BPO sector. So these are the thorny issues because of which this free trade agreement has not been signed. But the bright side is last year 2021, EU and India has decided to resume negotiations on this free trade agreement for a balanced, ambitious, comprehensive and mutually beneficial FTA. And EU-India high-level dialogue on trade and investments have been created. This mechanism has been created to sign the agreement. But still the agreement has not been signed. That is why at times India-EU relationship is described as loveless arranged marriage. So these are the various aspects of India-EU relations: Indo-Pacific policy, trade relationship, strategic partnership. In fact, last year, strategic partnership was upgraded. The last India-EU summit in 2021, it has been upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership. That is also there in the notes. Then economic impact of Brexit on India. How is Brexit going to affect India? So Brexit, first of all, demonstrates deep satisfaction with the idea of globalization, which will have an impact on world economy, and India will also get affected by that. British pound may weaken after Brexit. In the coming years, we can see that British economy may weaken. If that happens, this will be an opportunity for India. For the Indians traveling to Britain, it would become cheaper. For the students, for the investors, if the British pound becomes is weak. Also, Britain, since decades, have proved as India's gateway to Europe. This is what Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, had also said when Brexit was happening, that please don't do it because Britain is our gateway to Europe. Indians have invested a lot on the UK, and through UK, they were able to do their business operations in Europe. Britain was India's gateway to Europe. And this is not there anymore because Britain has exited, UK has exited EU, so it will not be able to act as India's gateway to Europe anymore. Then this will perhaps make Britain less attractive for Indian investors. Also, India is the second largest source of FDI in Britain, and this was the case. Why? Because Indian investors were using Britain as their gateway to Europe to do business operations in Europe, because when it was part of Europe, EU is free trade area. There's complete freedom of movement of capital, services, businesses, the complete freedom and trade. So, that India was benefiting from it. Now that it is not the case, there's possibility that Indian investors may get discouraged. To lure them because India is second largest source of FDI in UK. They may make it less regulatory for Indian companies to invest in UK, which will be a bright side of it. Then 800 Indian business companies have invested in UK, has created 110,000 jobs in UK, and Indian companies will have to now rethink their business strategies because, like I've told you, the UK will not be able to act as India's gateway to EU anymore. Also, Brexit will affect India's $108 billion IT sector. IT sector exports to EU may get affected because of Brexit. Automobile sector could face a downturn if there is a impact on trade in the automobile sector. Also, some analysts, they say that Brexit will create such situations that UK will need now talented people. The EU people, citizens of EU, which used to earlier do various jobs in UK, they will not be able to do that anymore because now they are not part of EU. So therefore, the UK may make changes to immigration policies, and this may open up doors for talented Indians to find jobs in UK. So this is also something which can act in favor of India. So these are the impacts of Brexit on India. You can use the viewpoints which were given in the handouts. First of all, Krishna Srinivasan, the former Foreign Secretary of the country, says that in view of COVID, so this he's tried to use COVID to explain the relationship. In view of COVID, Brexit and international tensions have unsettled the European Union, and it has exacerbated, it has increased its internal discords. Trade agreements with India will be the least of its problems. Basically, this former Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Krishnan Srinivasan, he says that now UK has bigger problems because it has exited EU. There will be internal discords. So they would want to sign a trade agreement with India because they would want to reinvent its trade relationship with India, because now EU rules are not applicable anymore. Also, I would like to mention C. Raja Mohan, the latest article which he wrote on this, India's new Europolitik. He says, Delhi now sees European powers as natural partners in constructing a durable balance of power in Indo-Pacific, because the Indo-Pacific policy which have been released by EU it has many parallels with India. So he says Delhi now see EU countries as natural partners when it comes to BOP in the Indo-Pacific, and therefore he is very positive and optimistic about the prospects of growth and cooperation between India and EU countries in the future. So these viewpoints can also be used. So this is all. This is how you could have attempted this question. So in the given time, I have tried to discuss all questions in the short time. Obviously, I would have loved to do a more elaborate discussion, more explanation of things, but then I had to squeeze all of this into one video, and I tried to do as much as I can, and I hope this has benefited you. I hope you've got a rough gist of how you can attempt PSIR questions in paper 2. And also, I hope my students have got enough confidence from the fact that, our notes are more than sufficient to attempt all these questions as far as the exam is concerned. In this video, we will discuss all the questions of paper 2 section B, PSIR paper 2 section B. Now, starting with the questions on section B, the first question, short notes. Obviously, first we will discuss the 5 short notes, and then we will discuss the remaining questions. First question is, discuss the strategic implication of India's look-east policy transforming into act-east policy. So to understand the requirement of the question, first identify the keywords. Now, what are the keywords here? There are 2 things which the examiner is talking about. One is the look-east policy, which has transformed into act-east policy. So basically, these are 2 keywords, look-east and act-east. Look-east was a policy which was launched by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. Act-east is a policy which has been launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This transformation which has happened, what is the implication? What is the importance of this transformation? This is what we have to do in the answer. This is what we are expected to do. This is the requirement. And yes, the tag word, the question tag is discuss. The question tag is always, we must pay attention to the question tag, because the question tag will help us frame the answer, make the structure of the answer, the specific requirement, in what manner we should attempt the question. This we will only get to know with the help of the question tag. Question tag indirectly tell us that what should be the structure and what approach we should follow in our answer. So the question tag here is discuss. So discuss means detailed description. Detailed description, first of all, detailed description of the issue which has been asked in the question. In this case, look east, act east policy, and also the various views and implications of that particular issue. So this is what we will try and do here. So discuss. If it was, critically examined, then we would have done a critical analysis also. If it was comment, then we would also highlight both sides of the divide, that whether this transformation has been successful or has been fruitful for India's national interest and India's grand strategy as far as Indo-Pacific region is concerned, or it is not being implemented properly. What are the challenges? What are the weaknesses? So if there was critical analysis question tag or critically examined, then we would have followed that approach. Even in the case of comment, we follow this approach that we highlight both sides of the divide. So these discussion on question tag, what these question tags mean, that was done in that another video on section A, and you can view that video to understand that. So this is how question tags, they help us. So discuss the strategic implication of India's look-east policy transforming into act-east policy. I'll show you. The 150 words is the word limit, so we will have to write a very brief short note here. I'll show you my notes, which was given to our students. Easily, the answer could have been attempted with the help of those notes. So this document we had circulated among our students. We had an elaborate discussion on look east, act east, India's Indo-Pacific policy in our class. And these are the class notes which were given to our students, and our students could have easily used these class notes to attempt this particular question. The question talks about the transformation from look east to act east, and what is the importance of that, what is the implication of that. We have to discuss this. So this is what we have done in our classes also, and it was very easy to attempt this particular question. So in the question, first of all, in the introductory paragraph, we have to highlight the transformation. How this transformation has happened from look east to act east. That is, look east policy was launched by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao in 1992 to engage with the Southeast Asia region. Whereas the act east policy has been launched by Prime Minister Modi in the year 2014 to where it has widened the scope of look east policy. How this widening has happened? Look east policy was only restricted to India's engagement with ASEAN countries plus economic integration, whereas act east policy has widened the scope. It is about India engaging with ASEAN countries plus economic integration plus East Asian countries and plus security cooperation. So the scope has been widened. This transformation should be highlighted. And Prime Minister Modi had also given 4 C's while announcing the policy. He had given 4 C's which will guide the policy. 4 C's of culture, commerce, connectivity and capacity building. This also must be highlighted in the answer. And this act east policy, this transformation which has happened, this widening of the scope which has happened, this is in line with India's contemporary security concerns, specifically with respect to the Indo-Pacific region. With respect to Indo-Pacific region, India has very vital interests. Security is a very important dimension of India's act east policy, and that is very important for India in this particular region, especially in the Indo-Pacific. For India, it is so important to secure freedom of navigation. And the biggest challenge here is rise of China, aggressive and expansionist behavior of China, assertive China. And to tackle such challenges, act east policy, engaging with East Asia, ASEAN countries, also the security dimension is there, economic dimension is if this engagement happens, if this relationship develops the way we want it to develop, this will help us counterbalance rise of China in this particular region. Therefore, it is logical extension of the act east policy that India has become a member of Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which will help us achieve our interests in this particular region. In this particular answer, in a paragraph, you must also highlight the importance of the Indo-Pacific region for India, which was also discussed in the classes, Indo-Pacific policy of India, because Act East and Indo-Pacific policy is related to each other. It is related to each other, the Act East and the Indo-Pacific policy. And in fact, India's Indo-Pacific policy is also an extension of the Act East policy. Act East policy helps us fulfill the goals of the Indo-Pacific policy. So what is the importance of this region? Peace and security in this region, freedom of navigation in this region, geopolitical aspirations of India are also there. India wants to be a net security provider. India wants to counter China's BRI and the string of pearls policy, promoting sustainable development. These are India's interests. Then Prime Minister Modi has given these 6 basic elements of the policy, which are to have free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Also, Southeast Asia should become the center of the Indo-Pacific region. ASEAN centrality is a fundamental feature of India's Indo-Pacific policy, and therefore is also in line with our goals of Act East. So all these things can be highlighted in this particular. A rule-based order is what India wants in Indo-Pacific. Act East policy will help us achieve all of this. So this could have been highlighted in the answer, and easily you could have written a 150-word short note. This is what was the requirement. Very good question and very simple also at the same time. So this is how we could have attempted this particular question. Then also, and in fact, in this handout itself, I would like to mention to you that there are so many quotations given in the handout of the Prime Minister. The statements made by the Prime Minister, that also any of those quotations could have been used in this particular answer to enrich the answer academically, to write an academically enriched answer. Dhruv Jaishankar's quotation, India's vision for Indo-Pacific is a reflection of a veiled message directed at China. This could have been used. This could have been easily used. Also, Prime Minister Modi talking about India as a philosophy, talking about the Vedanta philosophy. Prime Minister Modi mentioning about India's vision of inclusivity in the Indo-Pacific and in East Asia. Vedanta philosophy of India. How we are driven by our Vedanta philosophy and we believe in essential oneness of all. So all these quotations which we discussed in the classes could have been mentioned here to attempt this particular question. Easily the question could have been attempted. Now let us move on to the second question. Second question which was asked in the exam, the second short note. So let us see what is the second short note. Second short note is explain the philosophical foundation of India's foreign policy. There is this chapter in the syllabus, determinants of Indian foreign policy. We do an elaborate discussion on this in our classes. Determinants of Indian foreign policy. There are so many determinants. Geography is a determinant. Domestic politics is a determinant. International environment, international milieu is a determinant. Culture is a determinant. History is a determinant. So these are important factors which affect foreign policy, which determine foreign policy. Foreign policy is impacted by these factors. This is determinants of foreign policy. So this question is from this chapter, determinants of foreign policy, where what would we have been asked? We've been asked that how philosophical foundation of India has affected India's foreign policy. Which are those philosophical traditions and roots which we can see in Indian foreign policy? Yes, I just mentioned to you, Prime Minister Modi himself has said that Indian foreign policy is driven by the Vedanta philosophy, which believes in essential oneness of all. Vedanta philosophy, that is why this is on the basis of that India has adopted this principle of achieving the interest of inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Also the Vasudev Kutumbakam principle, which is also related to Indian philosophy, has also affected in Prime Minister Modi himself. If you read the newspapers properly, and in our discussions, class discussion also we had discussed this. If you look at what Prime Minister Modi says whenever he goes to global forums, whenever he delivers his speeches in United Nations and global forums like COP26, climate change meeting, UN Security Council, whenever he goes to his global forums and he delivers a speech, he uses quotations from India's philosophical traditions to help the world explain India's vision, India's global vision. And multiple times he has used such terms. Vedanta philosophy, like I discussed with you. Vasudev Kutumbakam principle related to Indian philosophy. Swami Vivekananda's principles have been discussed. Chanakya's philosophy also have been discussed in his speeches. These are all evidences of Indian philosophy affecting Indian foreign policy. And in fact, in our notes also, there were references to this in this section of role of culture in Indian foreign policy. We had discussed this, how ancient civilization and culture has affected Indian foreign policy, the principle and the value of Vasudev Kutumbakam, one world, which has and also the spiritual works of Swami Vivekananda, which has affected Indian foreign policy. On the basis of this, Indian foreign policy, when we look at Indian foreign policy is based on tolerance, non-violence, and universal brotherhood. So these values which we see in Indian foreign policy is driven from our philosophical traditions. Non-violence tradition, which we follow in our foreign policy, that is also driven by our old philosophy. So this could have been mentioned. Then also, why not views of Gandhi, Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore? Gandhi, Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore, their views also has affected Indian foreign policy. Their views has impacted Indian foreign policy. Because of their views have been instrumental in making Indian foreign policy adopt objectives like world peace and remaining aloof from power politics in the world. So these are all examples of philosophical traditions which has affected Indian foreign policy and which could have been used in writing this particular answer. It could have been easily used. Also, the Foreign Secretary of the country, Harshvardhan Shringla, this was also given to our students. We'd had a discussion on this in our classrooms, that Harshvardhan Shringla has recently mentioned about the 5 pillars of Indian foreign policy. He delivered a speech where he gave 5 pillars of Indian foreign policy. And in the 5th pillar, he talked about Indian in thought. He talked about Kautilya's Arthashastra. He talked about Mahabharata. He talked about Bhagavad Gita. That how this has affected Indian foreign policy. He says this has led to 3 strands in Indian foreign policy. Tradition of the middle path, Buddhist philosophy, human-centric globalization, inclusivity, and need for strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy. What is strategic autonomy? The ability of a state to pursue its national interest and adopt its preferred foreign policy without being constrained by any other factor, any other external factor. So this also, the very latest we had discussed in the class, the Foreign Secretary of the country himself is telling about the philosophical traditions which are visible in Indian foreign policy. All this could have been, all these Vedanta philosophy, Vasudev Kutumbakam principle, Vivekananda's philosophy, also Gandhi, Aurobindo, how they have led to a peaceful foreign policy of India, and this Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Kautilya's Arthashastra, all these things could have been used. All these points should have been mentioned in the answer in this particular short note. Easily, you could have attempted it with the help of our notes. It could have been easily done. And in fact, we do these discussions also in our class. Time and again, when we do these chapters, we discuss how, because Prime Minister Modi himself, he gives a lot of emphasis to all of this. Recently, when he went to the COP meeting, there also he quoted the philosophers of India while telling the world that we should all get together to fight against climate change. So all this, that is why this particular question has been asked. 4 to 5 points, if you write these which points we have discussed, it would have been enough for this particular short note. Then the third short note, explain India's position on the waiver of IPR on COVID-19 vaccines in WTO. Very good question, also of latest relevance. In fact, in November 2021, the ministerial conference meeting of WTO was supposed to be held, but it then got postponed because of the Omicron strain. And throughout the last year, this has been a burning issue. That is the demand which India has made, that WTO should give waivers. There should be TRIPS waivers for COVID vaccines. So this question has been asked, that explain India's position on the waiver of IPR on COVID-19 vaccines. So we have to do a detailed explanation. First of all, we have to explain what is India's position, and then also why India has adopted this position. What is the importance of this particular position? How will this benefit the world? How is this going to benefit India? How is it in line with India's traditional approach in WTO? All this is what we have to mention in this particular short note. And this also was discussed in the classes. Again, I'll go back to my notes, my class notes. This was discussed in the classes. This chapter we discussed in the class, India and WTO. Where India has always been a very important part of WTO, one of the members of WTO, and has always, defended and supported the multilateral character and the consensus-based decision-making procedure in WTO. India has a lot of disputes in WTO, which includes agriculture, dispute on agriculture, Doha development agenda. These are areas where there are differences between the developed and the developing countries. India has always sided with the developing countries. All these issues, services agreement, we discuss in the class. But here we have to mention, because it's a short note, so here we have to directly jump to the vaccine issue, the COVID-19 issue, which was there in our notes, which we did discuss. Starting with what India's Trade and Envoy Ambassador J.S. Deepak has to say. Ambassador J.S. Deepak is India's official ambassador. He has been India's official ambassador to WTO. And he had outlined India's 5 priorities in WTO. Formally on the behalf of India, in the face of in the wake of this particular pandemic, given the challenges which the pandemic has caused, he had outlined India's 5 priorities as far as WTO is concerned, and in that he had specifically mentioned about the TRIPS flexibilities. This is one of India's 5 priorities. The effective use of TRIPS flexibilities to ensure access to essential medicines, treatments and vaccines to all at affordable prices, especially in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. This is one of India's 5 priorities on WTO, officially mentioned by the Ambassador J.S. Deepak, India's special envoy to WTO. We must mention this in the answer. In line with this, India and South Africa proposed to WTO that there should be a TRIPS waiver for all WTO members to allow greater access to affordable COVID-19 healthcare facilities. This is what India's position is. India and South Africa jointly demanded that there should be a TRIPS waiver on this. Under this proposal, India and South Africa have sought temporary relaxations of IP, intellectual property, patents and other such provisions laid out under the TRIPS agreements of WTO, trade-related intellectual property rights agreement. So this has been officially stated by Government of India. So the expectation is, the importance is that if this is done, if this is accepted by WTO, if this IPR waiver happens, this would allow more firms to come forward to manufacture vaccines, medicines and COVID-19 related medical items. This would in turn augment their availability at affordable price. This would also ensure scaling up of manufacturing of vaccines and also ensure accessibility and affordability of vaccines for all. This is what India's position has been, and this is India's expectation, the relevance of India's position. Also, India at the global level, in the UN, India has highlighted this in one of the statements which India made in UN. India highlighted this, that on the issue of COVID-19, the global community should take into consideration this particular issue, very important issue of vaccine equity. India has told the global community that vaccine equity will defeat the collective global response to contain the coronavirus, as the disparity in accessibility of vaccines will affect the poorest nations the most. So this vaccine equity concern has been highlighted by India. That is why India took this position. 46-member LDC group has also supported India on this. LDC countries have supported India on this. The Director General of the WTO, she has also made a statement in support of India's stand, which should be mentioned in the short note. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, she has said this is a problem of the global commons. She's talking about the vaccines, the COVID vaccines, the accessibility of COVID vaccines at affordable prices, the issue of vaccine equity. She says this is a problem of the global commons and we have to solve it together. We agree that it's not acceptable for people and countries have to wait indefinitely for vaccines. We do not want to repeat experiences of the past. So this is the entire issue of vaccine equity, vaccine accessibility, vaccine affordability. India, this is the stand which India has taken. We must quote the official ambassador J.S. Deepak. If time permits, the word limit permits, we must also try and quote the head of WTO, the Director General of WTO, and also what is the position. So this all was discussed in the class. All of this was discussed in the class and this could have been easily attempted with the help of this. Now talking about the next question, the next short note. What is the next short note? Write about the growing significance of Quad. This has become the favorite topic of UPSC. They've been asking questions on Quad earlier also, and they've asked this year question in GS paper 2 as well, and also in the mains paper. They've asked question on Quad. Write about the growing significance of Quad. What is the significance of Quad? Quad has been in the news since last 1 year. Majorly in the news during 2021. So what is the significance of Quad? Again, mentioning about this. So this was again discussed in the classes. These are the class notes. We had a detailed discussion how Quad has emerged. So the question talked about growing emergence, significance of emergence of Quad. So how Quad has emerged, we must mention. First of all, it's very important to first of all in the opening paragraph tell the examiner what is Quad. Because there's a lot of misunderstanding. Very few students, they understand and they don't have the conceptual clarity. If you do not show the examiner, you must tell the examiner how you understand the concept so clearly, and that should be reflected in your answers. So what is Quad? You must first mention, obviously everybody knows Quad is 4 countries, US, Japan, India, and Australia. But what is this Quad grouping? You must mention. It is quadrilateral security dialogue. It's an informal dialogue process which is being made increasingly formalized as a strategic dialogue process between these 4 countries. It is not an organization. It is not a military alliance. There is no alliance agreement between these 4 countries. It also lacks institutional structure. So this is something which you should highlight what it is. For example, AUKUS. AUKUS is a military alliance agreement. There's a military agreement which has been signed between these 3 countries, Australia, UK and US. Quad is not a military alliance agreement. The Foreign Secretary of the country, Harshvardhan Shringla, himself has confirmed this, has clarified this, that Quad cannot be considered as a military alliance agreement. Mr. Blinken has also clarified this, because there have been such allegations, Russia and China have been making allegations that Quad is Asian NATO. But it is not a military alliance agreement, it's a quadrilateral security dialogue, strategic dialogue process. So it's an informal dialogue process. It was very informal, is being made increasingly formal because of the regular meetings which have been happening. So this is what you have to write in your introductory paragraph. How did this start? We should go to it had started in 2007. The initial idea was given to Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe had given the idea. 2007 it had started. 2008 it had ended also because Australia had withdrawn at that time. Then this idea has been revived in 2017. Idea has been revived in 2017 where all these 4 countries have adopted this goal to achieve a free, open, prosperous and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. And like I've told you already, this is a natural evolution of India's Act East policy. In the first question also we discussed that. So this is the goal which has been adopted. Basically, the approach is to counterbalance the rising influence of China in the Indo-Pacific. To ensure free or rule-based order in Indo-Pacific. To ensure this free, open, prosperous and inclusive Indo-Pacific. This is also in line with India's Indo-Pacific policy, in line with India's Act East policy. So that is how Quad is so important for us. And now recently, earlier what used to happen, the Quad meetings used to, when it started in 2007 and also in 2017, the Quad meetings used to happen at the level of joint secretaries. Then how it emerged, from joint secretaries it got elevated to foreign ministers. Then from foreign ministers, now it has got elevated to the level of head of states, leaders, leader level summit. In 2021, first physical meeting of the leaders of 4 countries have happened in Washington. Prime Minister Modi visited USA, attended that particular meeting. This is how it has evolved. And because of this evolution, because of the increasing importance of Quad, these meetings which have happened, people have started debating about its relevance. And the relevance is all about the Indo-Pacific region. USA is implementing Quad in order to implement their containment strategy against China. Indo-Pacific has become the geopolitical theater of tussle between US-China rivalry. Quad is a part of that. Quad is a very essential part of the new Cold War which is unfolding between US and China right now. All these points must be mentioned. India's interest should also be mentioned. The objective of Quad, which I just discussed with you, should be mentioned. And also then, in the concluding paragraph, the challenge, from India's perspective, what are the challenges? From India's perspective, what are the challenges? It is going to be challenging for India to be a part of Quad. Why? Because India at the same time is also engaging with Russia, China, SCO, BRICS, RIC. So how to balance these relations? Multi-alignment policy we are following. How to balance these relations? We are part of Quad. We are also part of SCO. SCO is dominated by Russia and China. So we are the only common element here in these two. Quad is trying to counterbalance China. The SCO is a Russia-China dominated forum which is there to match up to American presence in Central Asia. So this is something which is going to be challenging for India. How to balance this is going to be challenging for India. Then the views of experts. Quad, C. Raja Mohan's viewpoint, Quad has a big task of preventing the emergence of unipolar Asia dominated by China. C. Raja Mohan's point of view you can write. Shyam Saran's viewpoint you can write. India has the opportunity to shape regional security architecture through its role in Quad. The objective must remain to create a multipolar Asia. Quad can be the anchor of the Indo-Pacific region. So these viewpoints also should be mentioned in your answers. All this has been discussed in the classes. And also in the challenges part, which we just discussed, it is the contemporary challenge. 1-2 lines you also must write on impact of AUKUS. AUKUS agreement has been signed between US, UK and Australia. So this AUKUS agreement, where US and UK has promised that they are going to provide nuclear propelled submarines to Australia, this may have an impact on Quad in the future. The relevance of Quad, the centrality of Quad which was being seen as a central and the most important method on the part of US and these 4 countries to counterbalance China, that may get challenged in the future. Its relevance may reduce because US now has also got an alternative strategy, that is AUKUS strategy, engaging, have signed a military alliance agreement. So that is a big question mark as far as the future of Quad is concerned. So this is something which also can be mentioned in the answer. So easily you could have attempted with the help of our notes here. This could have been easily attempted. Then how does the last short note, how does the recent takeover of Afghanistan by Taliban impact India's strategic interests? I told my students, all my test series students, we gave them the notes. We asked this question in the test series. And multiple times, I've been telling all my students since last 6 months that UPSC is going to ask this question. Is going to ask this question. It will be asked. It was on the cards. The writing on the wall was there. There's no chance that this would not be asked. From our years of experience, we knew that this will be asked. And that is why this question was asked in the test series multiple times. Elaborate, updated, latest current development notes on Afghanistan were also given to all test series students. So this question, easy, very easy. What is the impact on India? Taliban has come back in Afghanistan. 15th of August, 2021, Taliban captured Kabul. How is this going to affect India? How is this going to affect India's interests? Point by point it was given. Everything given in the notes. Could have been easily attempted. No problems at all. So see, this is our India-Afghanistan notes, which we give to our students. With such a elaborate notes, historical evolution, everything is discussed, everything. India's investments in this is the dam which India had made in Afghanistan. Everything is discussed. India's concerns there. Then also the trade relationship, the Chabar investments which is being made with respect to Afghanistan and Iran, that also we had discussed. US-Taliban deal we had discussed. Also, India's position on the peace processes, which was obviously not in line with America signing a deal with Taliban. Then US withdrawal, Taliban coming back to power, Taliban 2.0 impact on India. This is exactly what was there in the notes. How is this going to affect India? Taliban 2. Why Taliban 2.0? Because earlier also there was a Taliban government in Afghanistan. In 1996 also Taliban government was formed in Afghanistan, which was overthrown in the year 2001 when US-led NATO forces had attacked Afghanistan. Now again in 2021, on our Independence Day, we got this gift, very unpleasant gift, very rude shock for India, that on 15th of August 2021, Taliban has again come back to power in Afghanistan. The democratic government with which we have had a strategic partnership, we had invested $3 billion in Afghanistan. That democratic government has been overthrown and has vanished and has disappeared. The president of the country, Ashraf Ghani, has fled the country. So, a very rude shock for India that Taliban again has come back to power in Afghanistan. That is why it is being referred to as Taliban 2.0. What is the impact on India? What is the impact on India? All points given to you here. This is embarrassing, first of all, for India. It is a big strategic setback that we had been supporting the democratic government of Afghanistan, and that particular government has been overthrown, and a new Taliban government has been formed. India had invested $3 billion in Afghanistan. Various projects, we built their parliament, we made dams, we made toilet complexes, we made schools, we made hospitals, we made roads, we laid down transmission lines, we strengthened their transportation infrastructure, their health infrastructure. A lot of infrastructure India has developed in Afghanistan. Invested $3 billion. We also helped them restore their destroyed forts. Cultural restoration also we helped. But now all this investment which India had made, now this is jeopardized, it is compromised, because if this new government doesn't support India, new Taliban government, if India is not able to develop a good relationship with them, then all this investment, it goes for a toss, and India will not be able to benefit from this in the future. Also, if Taliban adopts a radical approach like it had adopted in the 90s, if it adopts a radical approach, then the instability on Indian borders would rise up. This would make Indian borders and Indian security more and more fragile, because Taliban is under the influence of Pakistan. Pakistan has great influence over Taliban. Pakistan may manipulate the Taliban government in Afghanistan against India's interests, especially India's security interests. Pakistan has played a very important role in the formation of the new government in Afghanistan. The new Taliban government which has been formed, there is an unmistakable stamp of Pakistan over this particular government. Pakistan played an important role. In fact, the chief of ISI, General Hamid, was present in Kabul the day when the Taliban government was formed. Taliban has come back to power also with the help of Pakistan's assistance. Pakistan Army, Pakistan Air Force assisted Taliban's return to power. This new government which has been formed, we see members of Haqqani network part of this new government. Haqqani network is a terrorist organization, declared as a terrorist organization by the United Nations, which has been responsible for terrorist attacks on India's diplomatic missions in Afghanistan in the past. The same members of the Haqqani network has been made a part of the Taliban government on the insistence of Pakistan. So this is going to, so therefore, this Taliban, if it again follows this radical approach in the future, in the coming days, this is going to affect India's security interests. We should not forget what had happened to us in 99. IC-814 was hijacked and taken to Kandahar. All that episode is there in our memory. So therefore, the security interests of India may get compromised because of the Taliban coming to power in Afghanistan. India had also planned this project, Chabar project. Chabar, Zahedan, Zaranj, Delaram, reaching Afghanistan and then Central Asia. And also through this, then reaching Russia, INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor. All this investment, India had invested $500 million in Chabar. And therefore, the Shahid Beheshti port has been inaugurated there, which right now is being controlled by India. But if this new Taliban government, which is under influence of Pakistan, if it doesn't cooperate with India, all this entire project, this entire dream project of connecting India, Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, this project will be jeopardized. Then also, human rights violations. India is concerned about human rights violations of the minority communities in Afghanistan because of Taliban. Then problem of illegal drug trade. Problem of illegal drug trade. The illegal drug trade, this area, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan is called the golden crescent of opium. Afghanistan is the largest manufacturer of opium in the world. Not the manufacturer, sorry, they grow it. Opium is not something which is manufactured in factories. It's a crop. So they grow opium a lot, and in Afghanistan, they have been producing the largest amount of opium in the world. And since last 20 years, Taliban has been controlling this illegal opium trade. Taliban has been controlling the illegal opium trade, and Taliban is being funded by the illegal opium trade. So now that Taliban has come to power, there is a possibility that this is going to jeopardize India's interest in the coming days. India is precariously situated between the golden crescent of opium on our western borders and golden triangle of illegal drug trade on our eastern borders in Southeast Asia. There's a possibility that this may intensify drug trade, illegal drug trade. So these are the possible impacts on India's security, on India's interests in Afghanistan and in this region. In order to deal with these problems, what has India done? When India was the chair of the UN Security Council in the month of August in 2021, India ensured that this UN Security Council resolution number 2593 is passed, which says that Afghan territory should not be used for sheltering terrorism. Prime Minister Modi had made this statement in SCO summit that the world should ensure that Afghanistan should not become new home for terrorism. So this is a big concern for India. If this happens, Afghan territory in the future is used by Pakistan to fuel terrorism against India, that is something which can jeopardize India's security interests. So this should be mentioned. Then also recently, Delhi Regional Security Dialogue was conducted. Our NSA, Ajit Doval, invited NSAs of 7 other countries, 5 Central Asian countries and also Iran and Russia. And they had a discussion on the future of Afghanistan where they were able to take these decisions. So, and also furthermore, recently, just before the exam, just few days before the exam, 3rd meeting on India Central Asia Dialogue happened, where 5 Central Asian foreign ministers visited India and they were able to develop a regional consensus, broad regional consensus on Afghanistan. These things they have decided that India and the Central Asian countries have demanded that we would want to have a truly representative and an inclusive government in Afghanistan. We would want that all 5 Central Asian countries and 1 India would cooperate to combat terrorism and drug trafficking, which may intensify because of the return of Taliban rule. Central role of the UN should be emphasized in Afghanistan, providing immediate humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. So these are on these 4 parameters, a broad regional consensus have been developed between the Central Asian countries and India. After discussing all these issues with respect to Afghanistan, you also finally should quote the viewpoints of experts, which also we had discussed in our classes. C. Raja Mohan saying that strategic patience coupled with political empathy for the Afghan people should be the way forward. That is how we can address our interests in the future. Harsh V. Pant saying that India's Afghanistan policy should adapt to the evolving realities because Afghanistan is next door neighbor. This is going to affect our interests in the future. Bhairavi Tandon saying India should try and use the soft power of India, which India enjoys in Afghanistan, to strengthen ties in the coming days and future. And humanitarian aid, which is India providing to Afghanistan, is a step in the right direction. So this is how you could have attempted all these. Even Happy Mohan Jacob saying that, there's so many experts we give you in the class. You could have easily quoted any 2 of them or any 1 of them would have been sufficient for this particular answer. Happy Mohan Jacob says that what is the lesson which India has learned from this Afghanistan episode? That India will have to fight its own battles, so it must make enemies wisely, choose friends carefully, rekindle flickering friendships, and make peace while it can. So this is how it could have been attempted. Very easily it could have been attempted, this particular. Then next, short notes are over. 6A, 20-mark question. Non-alignment was little more than a rational strategy on the part of a materially weak India to maximize its interests with a bipolar distribution of global power. Comment. So basically, you've been given a quotation, a statement, and you've been told to comment on it. And it's a 20-marker. You can write an elaborate answer on it. So this again has been one of the important areas, and multiple times questions have been asked. And now, the recent trend was that in the last few years, whenever we used to get a question, on NAM's contemporary relevance. that whether NAM is relevant or not, whether in the 21st century NAM is relevant or it is not relevant. And we used to discuss that a lot in a lot of much more detail in our classes. We used to do that as well. But then I have been telling my students time and again that you should also look at the historical evolution. Historical evolution, the static part of history, what has happened in the history, that also is very important from the perspective of the PSIR optional. This time, this question which has been asked on NAM, it's not related to the contemporary relevance. The statement which has been given to you and you've been told to comment, this statement says, non-alignment was little more than a rational strategy on the part of a materially weak India. That India, when non-alignment had started, NAM movements had started in the 50s. That is when India was a weak country. We had just come out of colonization. We were a product of decolonization. We had just come out of colonization. India was at a very nascent stage of development. India was a weak and material in terms of our GDP, in terms of our material possessions, our military strength. We were obviously not at the we were at a nascent stage. We were not very strong. So the statement says that given India's condition at that time, India's level of affluence at that time, being a part of NAM was little more than a rational strategy. That it was rational and it was important, very important. This worked for India. This is the best possible course of path which India could have taken during those troubled times of Cold War. Bipolar distribution of global power means Cold War. At that time, Cold War was going on. There were two superpowers. The entire world was divided among these two superpower blocks. One pole led by US, other pole led by Soviet Union. And during these difficult times, obviously in front of these two superpowers, India had no chance. So in order to carve out a separate niche for itself in global politics, India had to do out of the box thinking. Non-alignment was the out of the box thinking, which was initiated by leaders like Nehru, Sukarno, Tito, Nkrumah. And in that time, it did suited India's interest. This is what the statement says. This is the message the statement is trying to convey. You have to always understand the underlying message of the statement and you have to comment on this. So if you have understood the underlying message in the statement, if you have understood the soul of the statement, it is very easy to comment on it. So basically here, in this we have to highlight how NAM benefited us, how NAM benefited India, being a part of NAM. How did it benefit India during the Cold War period? When India was not a prominent economy, we had not done economic reforms, we had not become one of the fastest growing countries of the world, we were, at a very nascent stage of economic development. Militarily also we were not very strong. In fact, India lost the war to China in 1962. So, in those circumstances, how becoming a part of NAM was a more than a rational choice, was a good choice. This you have to highlight. So if you know, not just, the current development, the current importance and relevance we discussed in the class, it's important. It is asked, many times it has also been asked. But this time they asked the historical irrelevance of NAM. How it suited India in the 50s, 60s, 70s. That has to be highlighted in this particular answer. So again, I would go to my notes and I do a very detailed discussion on the emergence of NAM. What is NAM? How did it emerge? What was India's role? What was NAM's achievements? How did India benefit during Cold War? We do this in our class, and all this could have been used. NAM is basically 120 countries of the developing world are part of NAM. This movement had started in 1955 through the Bandung Conference, then the Belgrade Summit. Who played important role in the creation of NAM? Joseph Broz Tito, Nasir, Nehru, Sukarno, Nkrumah. These are leaders of Yugoslavia, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Ghana. They played an important role in the launching of the NAM movement, in starting this movement, non-alignment movement. That is the policy of not aligning with any of the two superpower blocks. Any of the two superpower blocks during the Cold War period. This must be highlighted in the introductory paragraph. How did it start? Who started the movement? Which summits were there? Bandung Summit, Belgrade Summit, and what was the objective? That should be highlighted. These 10 principles, these are called Bandung principles. These principles could have been briefly mentioned in your answer. Also, the objectives of NAM. What were the objectives of NAM at that time when it started? These were the objectives of NAM. These were the objectives of NAM. Support for self-determination, national independence, to strengthen the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, opposition to apartheid, non-adherence to multilateral military pacts. We're talking about NATO and Warsaw. So this NAM's basic purpose was to dilute the bipolar distribution of power during Cold War. Also to struggle against imperialism in all its forms and manifestation. Then also neocolonialism, fighting against neocolonialism was one of the objectives. Achieving nuclear disarmament, peaceful coexistence of all nations, non-interference in the internal affairs, rejection of the use of threat or force in international relations, strengthening of United Nations, democratization of international relations, and restructuring of the international economic system. The economic imbalance which was there between developed and a developing world, between the core and the periphery. New international economic order was also adopted as by NAM as one of the goals. So these were the objectives. These were the objectives at that time. And by being part of this movement, India was able to carve out a separate niche for itself in world politics. Was able to carve out a separate niche for itself in world politics. And India was able to avoid the Cold War hostility between US and Soviet Union. And therefore was able to focus on its own development and growth. India during the NAM period was able to get assistance from the Western bloc of countries also, and from the US bloc of countries, and also from Soviet Union. In fact, later on in 71, India signed a friendship treaty with Soviet Union also. These steel plants which were initially created in India, constructed in India, if you look at the history of these steel plants, Britain helped us, France helped us, USA helped us, Soviet Union. So all these, they helped us, establish these steel plants in India, which laid down the foundation of India's industrial development, heavy industries. So we were able to get assistance from all major powers belonging to both the blocs. So that is why it was more than a rational strategy to adopt at that time. And we were able to avoid the hostility at that time and focus on our development. That was NAM's contribution. We discussed all this NAM's contribution in our notes. First phase, second phase, how NAM helped achieve the objectives which they had set for themselves. So all these three phases of NAM, the achievements of NAM, we had discussed in the classes. So all this could have been mentioned in your answers. As far as NAM is concerned, we could have used this. And then also, so this is something which we could have used as far as NAM is concerned, all this material which we have discussed in our classes. So this is how we could have attempted this particular question. And also then, why not? We must also quote viewpoints of experts. Viewpoint of experts. So you have these former foreign secretaries of India, Shyam Saran, former C. Raja Mohan, and international relations experts. They have given viewpoints on NAM. They have talked about the historical relevance, and then they also commented on the contemporary relevance. The realist scholar C. Raja Mohan says that in contemporary times, NAM is not relevant anymore. So both viewpoints you should highlight. So there are other scholars, the scholars who have supported. If you look at what S.D. Muni has to say, if you look at what scholars like Shyam Saran has to say, they have at times appreciated the historical role and relevance of NAM for India. However, if you look at C. Raja Mohan's viewpoint, C. Raja Mohan says NAM was not even relevant during the Cold War, not even relevant today. He's used the term NAM in coma. He wrote this article. So these two sides of the divide should also be highlighted in the answer. So this could have been easily attempted given our notes. So I'm trying to show you small snippets of my notes, not the entire notes. It's not possible to discuss all these entire notes here in this video. These notes, all these topics we discussed, we take 6 months, 5 to 6 months. And now right now in just this 2-hour video, I'm trying to show you the snippets of my notes and trying to tell you how you could have used all this to attempt these questions. So then the next question. Examine the geostrategic point of contention in the bilateral relationship between India and China. Every year we get this question. India-China relations. So this year, what has been asked? Examine the geostrategic points of contention. That means the challenges in the relationship, disagreements between India and China, areas of confrontation in the bilateral relationship between India and China. Geostrategic points. Security of India, the strategic relevance of this region where India and China are in a tussle with each other, these we have to highlight. And we have to examine them. That means a detailed analysis. given different viewpoints. We have to do a detailed analysis of each and every issue which is there. So what are these issues? Which are issues of geostrategic, which are the geostrategic points of tension, confrontation between India and China? So when we look at India and China, so we can list all of them one by one, we can list all of them. So there is, as far as geostrategy, and again, why not? I will show you the notes again. And you know, we had discussed all this in the class itself. India-China relations. We had done an elaborate discussion on all of this Sino-Indian relations. Historical evolution, how relations have evolved over the years. Contemporary relevance. How India-China relations changed after 1988. The Wuhan summits, Mamallapuram summits, which happened a couple of years ago, all that was discussed. Also, how we can use theories to understand India-China relations, and because the question is on points of tension. So I've directly jumped on to points of tension. First is the boundary dispute. The boundary dispute between India and China. The boundary dispute between China has this confrontationist policy, this policy of territorial expansion and territorial grab, which has been criticized by Prime Minister Modi also. The days of territorial expansion are over. We are in the 21st century and India will not tolerate this. India-China has a boundary dispute which has been affecting India-China relations. India-China border is divided into three sectors: eastern, middle and the western sectors. Western and the eastern sectors are most disputed. So the border is known as LAC, line of actual control. So the dispute is there. This is, and this also is described as China's psychological warfare to burst Indian bubble. If we're talking about India rising as a power in this region, but when China makes intrusions into Indian territory, in Ladakh, in Galwan, on the Pyeonggong Song Lake, in Arunachal, that, also affects India's image as an emerging power in this region. They try to burst India's bubble. So this is a very big point of tension, the border dispute. This should be mentioned. And in the news, it has been in the news recently. It has been in the news, the Galwan face-off, which happened in 2020. Since then, there have been tensions on India-China border, LAC, in Ladakh since 2020. Right now, India and China are trying to diplomatically and militarily resolve this particular issue. So this India-China border dispute must be mentioned. Or it is not just India-China border, even the Doklam standoff. China is trying to grab Bhutan's territory also to make India's chicken neck corridor, the Siliguri corridor, vulnerable. This is a very big point of tension. They are in a diplomatic and military talks with each other right now trying to resolve this. So we had discussed this with the help of maps in the class. We've done all this discussion in the class. This could have been attempted. China's new land border law, which says that China should strengthen border infrastructure. Chinese military personnel should, strengthen border infrastructure to safeguard China's territory. The new law says that China shall take measures to safeguard territorial integrity and land boundaries. For this, People's Liberation Army, China's army, shall carry out border duties including organizing drills and resolutely prevent, stop and combat invasion, encroachment, provocation and other acts. This law also necessitates China to take measures to support economic and social development on the border areas. This new law, China's new land border law which has been passed, is also a concern for India in the days to come. This will have an impact on India. This law, the experts in India say, this law would formalize some of China's recent actions in disputed territories with both India and Bhutan, which has happened. You must be reading the newspapers. China building villages around villages near Arunachal territory. China constructing bridges. Had recently constructed a bridge on the Pyeonggong Song Lake, developing a lot of infrastructure on the border and on the disputed territories. Also in Doklam in Bhutan. So this will be formalized with this particular law. This is going to have an impact on India. Then also, we must talk about BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, China's flagship infrastructure development project, which has been opposed by India, boycotted by India. India has boycotted and opposed BRI. Why? Because according to India, this is a project which compromises India's sovereignty and territorial integrity, because One of the projects is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. CPEC corridor is being constructed through Gilgit-Baltistan in Pakistan. It's part of BRI. So India has expressed its concern with respect to that. Also, according to India, these Chinese projects, they lead to unsustainable debt burden for communities and have an adverse impact on the environment. China is trying to promote its own political control through these projects. India says it's a hegemonic project of China. All these infrastructure development which China is doing all around Asia, Africa, constructing seaports, highways, railways, pipelines, they are going to use this for military purposes also in the days to come. It's a military hegemonic project. Brahma Chalani has coined this term called China's debt trap diplomacy. Brahma Chalani says that BRI investments are going to lead to debt trap diplomacy. They reflect China's debt trap diplomacy. Once the poor countries are not able to pay the debt, they get to the debt trap and then China exploits them. Hambantota seaport is a primary example. India has opposed all of this. India has opposed this. This is also a point of tension. India is trying to counter BRI. India is trying to counter BRI with the help of, and these BRI investments are also helping China implement the policy where they're trying to ring fence India in the Indian Ocean region, which is also described as China's string of pearls policy. So India has opposed this. India is trying to give alternatives to BRI by launching Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, INSTC project, Kaladan project in Myanmar, Chabar port, Amlekhganj Motihari pipeline in Nepal, BBIN project, Project Mausam. These are Indian alternatives to BRI. So there's a tussle as far as BRI is also concerned. That also must be mentioned here. Then also, as far as American initiatives are concerned, India has been part of these American initiatives as well. China's growing role and influence and power in Indo-Pacific. India is trying to counterbalance that by being part of Quad. And China and Russia has described Quad as Asian NATO, again a point of tension. And India has also appreciated American initiatives like the Blue Dot Network and the Build Back Better World partnership launched by Joe Biden in the G7 summit recently. So this is again must be mentioned. All this we had discussed in the notes. Hydropolitics between India and China. Brahmaputra River. China constructing infrastructure on Brahmaputra River and therefore in future may control the flow of the water. All these reports also we had discussed in our class. So this also is a concern for India. This is also a point of tension which should have been discussed. India's concerns over the river Brahmaputra, which can have impact on India. India is concerned about that the volume and the quality of water in the future will be affected. There is absence of transparency as far as China constructing projects on the Brahmaputra River and the Brahmaputra River basin. Also, potential use of this as a leverage during border disputes. When Doklam standoff had happened in 2017, China had stopped sharing hydrological data with India on Brahmaputra River. They have an agreement that they will share hydrological data with each other. So that is also a concern. National security implication is there. Environmental impact is there. Increasing disaster vulnerability. These are all Indian concerns. So these are points of tension which are there. So India must adopt a robust approach to secure India's interests as far as China is concerned. And why do China do all of this? What are China's intentions? Why do they, keep on poking India and have these problems with India? Territorial dispute, water dispute. What are Chinese intentions? That also should be mentioned here. China wants to be an Asian hegemon and sees Japan and India as challengers. China, when you look at China's grandiose project BRI, they want to implement this. They see India as a big challenger in this particular case. They see India as a swing state, which is trying to swing in the US camp, which is not being appreciated by China, sorry. That is why this is China's intention. These are China's intentions. They want to, because of these reasons, China is following such aggressive policies with respect to India. Then also China's grand strategy. When you look at China's grand strategy is to safeguard sovereignty, maintaining stability and sustaining economic progress. This China, if you look at Chinese thought, they believe in the age-old belief of having a subdued neighborhood. If there is a subdued neighborhood, then China believes this. The Chinese thought says, historically they believed in this, that if they have a subdued neighborhood, a weak neighborhood, they will be able to assert themselves as a regional power. And India, Japan is being seen as a challenge here. So therefore, all of this explains the Chinese intentions and their aggressive moves. This could have been mentioned in the answer. Then what should be India's approach? We must mention Sham Saran and C. Raja Mohan here. Shyam Saran and C. Raja Mohan has explained India's approach. They say that India should follow an approach of co-engagement. India should follow an approach of co-engagement. What is this approach of co-engagement? Engage with China wherever possible and also follow the approach of containment, a pragmatic approach. This is what C. Raja Mohan and Shyam Saran has said, that follow a pragmatic approach of containment plus engagement with China. And in your concluding paragraph, you must mention that how can we describe India-China relationship in the conclusion? What is the final analysis? So, in your concluding paragraph, you should also describe the nature of a India-China relationship. What is in the final concluding paragraph, how can we describe the relationship? Here we must take help of Herbert Wolff. You mentioned Herbert Wolff in your answer because Herbert Wolff has described that India-China relations, they oscillate between 3 C's of conflict, cooperation and competition. In this answer, we have discussed about competition, we have discussed about conflict, but there are areas of cooperation also. China is India's largest trading partner. They are engaging with each other as far as BRICS is concerned, SCO is concerned, AIIB is concerned. On climate change also they have a common position. On WTO also they have a common position. So there are areas of cooperation also, but then areas of conflict and cooperation, conflict and competition also. Therefore, Shyam Saran and C. Raja Mohan says, follow a pragmatic approach, co-engagement, engage, also follow containment strategy. So this is how you can attempt this answer. In fact, there are many more experts also which we had discussed in our classes, which could have been used in these answers. So this is how you can attempt this China question. Very simple question. They basically asked you that examine the points of tension. So examine points of tension. What are points of tension? What are the challenges? And what should be the approach? How can we deal with this? That also should be mentioned in your answer. Because examine means elaborate examination, elaborate analysis. Let us now discuss 6C, which is write a brief analysis of the ethnic conflicts and cross-border migrations along India, Myanmar and India-Bangladesh borders. So this also is an important question and it has been repeated. This has been asked from the chapter of ethnic conflict in South Asia and refugee crisis in South Asia in our neighborhood, and has been discussed in the classes again. And has been asked previously also in the exam. This could have been easily attempted. What is this particular question? That you have to basically elaborate. Briefly, you have to analyze what are ethnic conflicts and cross-border migrations as far as issues concerned, as far as India, Myanmar, India, Bangladesh is concerned. Illegal migration issue of Bangladesh. Illegal migration issue of the India-Bangladesh border. This should be discussed. How this is impacting India-Bangladesh relations. CAA, NRC, which we have, NRC exercise, which we have done in Assam, and as a result of that 1.9 million people have been listed as those people who do not have documents to support their citizenship in India. This is affecting India-Bangladesh relations. India-Bangladesh relations, the illegal migration issue, because there is a growing anxiety in Bangladesh that all these 1.9 million people may be deported back to Bangladesh. In fact, we should start the answer with the 1971 crisis, when at that time more than 10 million people had migrated to India because of the operation Searchlight of the East Pakistan Army in Bangladesh. We discussed that in the class. Since those days, this migration issue has been there, and even today illegal migration is a rampant problem when it comes to India-Bangladesh border management problems. And then in case of Myanmar also, and in case of Myanmar as well, this issue is there, and recently the last couple of years we've seen this issue, that is the Rohingya refugee crisis. Rohingyas, an ethnic minority, which have been staying in the Rakhine province of Myanmar because of their persecution in Myanmar. They have migrated to Bangladesh, they become refugees in Bangladesh. More than 1 million of them stayed in Bangladesh. Then they have also migrated to India. India has refused to accept them as refugees and have described them as illegal migrants and have described them as a threat to Indian security, because according to India, they have links with extremist organizations. Because Rohingyas have a terrorist organization called ARSA, Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army in Myanmar. And India, it's a dilemma situation for India. What to do? If India supports the Rohingyas, that yes, if India has a sympathetic attitude towards the Rohingyas, then the India-Myanmar relationship gets affected. Because the present military government in Myanmar, and even before that, when Aung San Suu Kyi was the leader in Myanmar, at that time, the Myanmar always defended that they are taking action against the terrorist organization, ARSA. India supported that also. But then if India doesn't sympathize with the Rohingyas, then India-Bangladesh relations get affected, because Bangladesh is sympathetic towards Rohingyas. In fact, these Rohingyas are considered by Myanmar as illegal Bangladeshi migrants. All this has been discussed in the class. This should be mentioned here. So it is affecting India's relations. For India challenges how to balance Myanmar and Bangladesh relations in the case of Rohingya refugee crisis. For that, India has supported the issue that the Rohingya should be resettled back in the Rakhine province, and India has also launched Operation Insaniyat, giving aid to Bangladesh to support Rohingyas, but at the same time, India has also supported Myanmar government's right to take action against the terrorist organizations like ARSA. That's how India is trying to follow a middle path on this particular issue. Then also, when it comes to Bangladesh, Myanmar, we've also seen that the insurgent organizations operating in Northeast India, they escaped to territories of Bangladesh and Myanmar in order to, save themselves from India's paramilitary forces, and then operate from there, which also is a big issue in India, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar relations. So all these issues should be highlighted in this particular question and what we discussed in our classes also. So now let us discuss this particular question, 7a. Why South Asia is considered as the world's politically and economically least integrated region? Explain. So talking about South Asia, this question has been asked multiple times as far as the UPSC paper is concerned. That is, that why regional integration and regional cooperation in South Asia has not taken place. Whereas we have seen regional integration, regional cooperation happening in Europe and Southeast Asia. Europe in the form of EU and in Southeast Asia in the form of ASEAN. So why this has not happened in case of South Asia? So this has been asked multiple times in the exam. Failure of SAARC. This question is related to failure of SAARC. In case of Europe and Southeast Asia, EU and ASEAN has been successful in ensuring regional integration and regional cooperation. But this has not been ensured in case of South Asia. This has not happened. We have not been able to achieve regional integration and regional cooperation. SAARC was supposed to do it and SAARC has failed. This is what has been asked in the question basically, and we have to explain this, how this has happened, why SAARC has failed. So the examiner has said that, regional integration, regional cooperation has not happened in South Asia. That is given in the statement. Explain this statement. That means how this has happened. What are the reasons for the failure of SAARC? What are the reasons that the South Asian integration has not happened? So this also was discussed in the classes. This was discussed in our classes, and we must, we could have easily attempted this particular question. In our class notes, we had discussed this. Notes on SAARC. The chapter on SAARC, when we discussed SAARC, how SAARC was formed. So here we discussed that SAARC had these objectives of regional cooperation, regional integration, and multilateralism. These were the broad objectives of SAARC. This is why SAARC was formed, to achieve regional integration in South Asia. And all South Asian countries were members of SAARC. But this SAARC body has failed. Why it has failed? What are the reasons for the failure of SAARC? First is India-Pakistan hostility has crippled the working of the organization. The last SAARC summit was held in 2014. The next one was supposed to be held in 2016 in Islamabad, which was cancelled because of the Uri terror attack. And since then, no SAARC summit has been conducted. Recently, Pakistan did offer that they would want to conduct it again, but India has refused. That until unless Pakistan will not stop fighting a proxy war against India, until unless Pakistan will not stop supporting insurgency and terrorism against India, India is not interested in taking forward the process of SAARC with Pakistan on board. So that has been one big factor. Then origins of SAARC. When SAARC was formed at that time, the idea was given by Bangladesh President Ziaur Rahman. And as a part of this idea, at that time it was believed that these small neighbors of India, they're trying to form an organization to counterbalance India. This was the original idea. That is why there was a hesitation on part of India also to cooperate with South Asian countries in SAARC. So when you start with such a negative sentiment, it obviously will affect the performance. Structural asymmetry has been there. All these South Asian SAARC members, we see a lot of disparity among them. There is economic disparity. There is militarily, they are not equally powerful. Economically, we can't say that, they are at the equal level of economic development. Also, the area is very politically unstable. Lack of political stability is also there. When your own house is on fire, when your own house is not in order, How are you going to cooperate with your neighbors? That's not going to happen. This is a problem in South Asia. South Asian countries, a lot of political instability. Sri Lanka we've seen in the past. Afghanistan we're seeing it right now. Pakistan we know the role of the deep state. Instability in Nepal, instability in Bangladesh. So these South Asian countries have been suffering from instability. Structural asymmetry is there. There are big countries like India, economically powerful, militarily powerful. But then there are smaller countries also where political system is also not in order and economic system is also not in order. So when these problems there, you know, there are diverse, different political systems existing in South Asia and also unequal economies. They affect the process of regional integration. Identity crisis is there. A common South Asian identity has not developed. A common South Asian identity has not developed. And why the South Asian identity has not developed? Because all these, you know, post-colonial states of South Asia, they are still grappling with their own identity crisis. For example, in Pakistan, half of the country believes that they're part of South Asia. The other half of the country believes that they are part of West Asia. Similarly, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, a lot of people in Sri Lanka believe that they must engage with, they are part of the Southeast Asian identity rather than South Asian identity. So there is an identity crisis. A common South Asian identity has not developed. It has not also, they have failed to make it a free trade area. They have failed to make it a free trade area. SAFTA agreement was signed, South Asia Free Trade Agreement, but it has not been implemented. The small countries in South Asia, they consider India as a bullying big brother, small brother syndrome is there. Big brother, small neighbor syndrome, that is affecting integration process. SARC functions on rule of consensus until unless everybody will not agree, the SARC cannot function. Recently we saw in 2021, they were supposed to have a meeting on the sidelines of the UNGA summit in September 2021 and Pakistan did not agree that you can't have representatives of the previous democratic government to represent Afghanistan in that meeting. They were supposed to, Nepal was planning that meeting in New York. Pakistan took a stand that members of Taliban should be allowed to represent Afghanistan in the SARC meeting. The other countries did not agree. There was no consensus. Meeting got cancelled. So therefore, you know, these examples can also be mentioned in your answer. So these are the reasons of its failure. Reasons of the failure of SAFTA also must be mentioned. India, Pakistan, problems has always affected India's trade with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Absence of connectivities, presence of non-tariff barriers. Economies are not complementary but competitive. So these are all reasons of the failure. That is how the integration process in South Asia has not been achieved because of the failure of SARC. And these are reasons of the SARC failure. Also, the recent contemporary details also, you should mention what is happening right now. So when you look at the future of SARC, the future of integration in South Asia, that is also very bleak. We can't see a light at the end of the tunnel because Indian approach has changed. India has tilted from SARC to BIMSTEC. India sees BIMSTEC as more relevant right now. Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, the foreign minister has said that India sees energy, mindset and possibility in the BIMSTEC. India has started following the approach of SARC minus Pakistan. This is very much visible in the launching of the South Asia satellite and also the BBI and corridor agreement which they have signed. So, you know, this future also, India is now trying to replace SARC with BIMSTEC. India is engaging more with BIMSTEC. The approach has changed. There's an eastward shift in Indian foreign policy. But then the small countries in SARC, they have been supporting revival of SARC also. They have been supporting revival of SARC as well. So this is how you can discuss latest developments on COVID. Also, you could have discussed the SARC emergency meeting, which was called by Prime Minister Modi, where COVID-19 emergency fund was launched. India contributed $10 million to it. But there also we saw Pakistan, you know, taking up the issue of Kashmir, raising the issue of Kashmir and Article 370 during that meeting, negatively affecting the outcome of the meeting. Then the views of experts. There are views of experts. So, Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, he has described SARC as a jammed vehicle, That must be mentioned here. He says ours is not just a story of missed opportunities, but also of deliberate obstacles. Elimination of terrorism is a precondition, not only for fruitful cooperation, but also for the very survival of the region itself. So Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar, this quote actually highlights the entire crisis in South Asia. He describes SARC as a jammed vehicle. This must be mentioned in your, this quotation should be mentioned in your answers. Then also similarly, viewpoint of C. Raja Mohan is a realist scholar. He gives a realist account of crisis in SARC. He says India should not shed tears over SARC. If SARC is not working, India should find other opportunities to ensure integration in the region. So these other scholars also, we could have mentioned in our answers, but the small countries, the small neighbors of India, they have supported revival of SARC. Dr. Lote Sering, the Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sheikh Hasina, they have all supported the revival of SARC. So all these viewpoints we discussed in our classes. So this could have been mentioned to answer write a very academically rich answer. 7B, how do the constituent states influence the foreign policy making process in India? This is a question on para-diplomacy, also known as constituent diplomacy, also discussed in my classes and in my notes. So how do constituent states influence foreign policy making of India? So basically, again, this is a question on the chapter of determinants of foreign policy and the institutions of foreign policy making. So the para-diplomacy concept, which has been also used in Prime Minister Modi's speeches, that is why it has been asked in the question. This should be explained here, that how states of India, federal units of India, constituent federal units of India have been contributing in India's foreign policy making. So first, define para-diplomacy, define constituent diplomacy, and then give examples to substantiate your argument. So this is what we have to do. So this was also there in the notes. In this section where we had discussed role of domestic politics in Indian foreign policy, here we had discussed that how para-diplomacy is happening. Para-diplomacy, which is also known as constituent diplomacy, this concept, this is what has been asked in the exam. The question they have asked, how constituents they have play a role in foreign policy making of India. So first of all, hit the nail on the head. Define the concept first. This concept has been given by an American scholar, John Kincaid. John Kincaid coined this term in 1990. What is the definition of this term? He highlighted the foreign policy role for local and regional governments within a democratic federal system. So John Kincaid had said that in a democratic federal system, the regional governments, local governments, state governments, they also have a role in foreign policy making. And that, according to John Kincaid, can be described as para-diplomacy or constituent diplomacy. And we see examples of that in India's case. We see examples of that in India's case. We have seen that states have been having say, especially when they were coalition governments. If you look at the Constitution of India, which must be mentioned in your answer, if you look at the Constitution of India says foreign policy making, signing international agreements and treaties is in the union list. Is in the union list, and therefore the state governments, the union government has no such legal obligation to consult the state governments before signing deals, agreements with other countries or conducting their foreign policy. Foreign policy is a union list subject. But then despite this, we have seen that state governments, regional governments, local governments, they have been federal constituents of India, they have been affecting Indian foreign policy in the past. And those incidents should be mentioned. In the past, we have seen whenever they have been coalition governments, for example, the DMK, AIA, DMK or MDMK, whenever they've been in the union government coalition, they have affected India's policy on Sri Lanka. That should be elaborated, India's policy on Sri Lanka. They have all these AIA, DMK, DMK, they have always been sympathetic to the Tamil community in Sri Lanka, which has been never given equal status. They have been supporting the implementation of the 13th Amendment in Sri Lanka. So India, therefore, has taken a sympathetic attitude. The government of India, Prime Minister Modi, has clarified the stand that the Sri Lankan government, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president, should try to pursue a reconciliation process in Sri Lanka after the end of the civil war. Now they should pursue a reconciliation process, and this, India has clarified, can be done only by implementing the 13th Amendment, doing devolution of powers, giving more financial, land and police powers to northern provinces. And these people of Tamil Nadu, the political parties of Tamil Nadu, have been influencing the union government in the past and even in the present, because they are supportive of the issue of Tamil issue in Sri Lanka. Similarly, National Conference have been affecting Indian policy on Jammu and Kashmir. Then also, there are many more examples which could be quoted. Mamata Banerjee's role in West Bengal. Because of her opposition, the Indian government has avoided signing the Teesta Water Agreement with Bangladesh. Also recently in the Mamallapuram summit, India and China signed an agreement to develop a sister state relationship between Tamil Nadu and the Fujian province of China. Again an example of para-diplomacy. So all these examples could be quoted in your answers in order to, highlight the role of the constituents, federal constituents. They have been playing a role as far as foreign policy making is concerned. However, in the concluding paragraph, you must mention that the role has not been very prominent because foreign policy making is a unionist subject issue. It's a unionist subject. Union government has the complete legal prerogative as per Indian constitution to make the foreign policy, is not legally obliged to seek consent from the states. Therefore, it has not been, they have not been playing a very elaborate role. No. But yes, in certain cases, state governments, state leaders, state political parties have been affecting Indian foreign policy stand, which these are the examples which I just mentioned to you, and you must mention this in your answers. So this is how you could have attempted. You must start with the definition of para-diplomacy first, which is given by John Kincaid. Now let's discuss question number 7C. Examine the evolution of India's role in the global nuclear order. We discussed this in much more detail in our particular in our classes, and it could have been easily attempted. There's nothing difficult about it. This question is from the chapter of India and the nuclear question, that how India's role, what has been India's role in the entire global nuclear structure, the global nuclear order. Evolution we have to discuss. So we'll start from Nehru itself. What was India's approach at that time? Nehru, then Rajiv Gandhi, then the present status. So all this is the chapter which we had discussed in our class. And these notes were given to students. India and nuclear question, changing perceptions and policy. So, in fact, Mahatma Gandhi, just before independence also, Mahatma Gandhi had criticized the use of atomic bomb. He had described it as the most diabolical use of science. Then Nehru had also supported the issue of a disarmament, a world free of nuclear weapons. Rajiv Gandhi action plan was proposed in the year 1988, an action plan for world free of nuclear weapons. So Rajiv Gandhi had also supported that disarmament should happen. Even though that action plan was not accepted, USA had rejected the Rajiv Gandhi action plan and was not accepted and not implemented by UN also. Then in the year 2007 also, India submitted a working paper on nuclear disarmament to Conference on Disarmament, which is in Geneva. So India has been always supportive of disarmament. This has been India's stand. India has been supported and committed to the goal of universal, non-discriminatory and verifiable nuclear disarmament. However, India has not signed NPT, CTBT. India had not signed this because we must mention the reasons, which also we discussed in the classes, that India considers them as discriminatory treaties. NPT especially is discriminatory. It only deals with how to stop a horizontal proliferation, but allows a vertical proliferation. These terms should be used in your answer. So India is not a signatory of NPT, and when India had tested nuclear weapons in 1998, sanctions were imposed upon India. Sanctions were imposed upon India, and since then India has been living in nuclear isolation. India was not allowed to do nuclear commerce in the world. IAEA and NSG would not allow India to do nuclear commerce, nuclear trade in the world. But all this changed. How did this evolve? We must discuss that. How did this evolve? All this in the class we had discussed India's nuclear doctrine, CTBT, NPT, but in this answer we will write down the evolution only. So India is not a nuclear pariah state anymore. That means, like I told you, when we tested nuclear weapons in 98, there were sanctions. India was not an NPT signatory. India was not allowed by NSG and IAEA to do nuclear commerce. India was living in nuclear isolation. India was a nuclear pariah state, which means that completely isolated. The entire world had, as far as NSG countries is concerned, the nuclear suppliers group is concerned, they had decided that they are not going to have any nuclear commerce with India. So India was not a well-accepted nuclear state at that time. But this changed. How did this change? This changed when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. And George W. Bush was there. Indo-US nuclear deal was announced. In 2005, India and US will try and achieve civil nuclear cooperation initiative. This was the joint statement which they released, where they released this goal that India and US is trying to achieve full civil nuclear cooperation. And how is this going to happen? This was not possible under the NSG IAEA rules. Therefore, USA helped India get waivers from NSG and IAEA. Exceptional waivers has been given by Nuclear Suppliers Group and International Atomic Energy Agency to India, which has helped India come out of nuclear isolation. India is not a nuclear pariah state anymore. That is how the Indo-US nuclear deal, which was announced in 2005, finally materialized in 2008, signed in 2008, when US changed its own laws also, and India also got waivers from NSG and IAEA. India agreed to separate its military facilities, military nuclear facilities and civil nuclear facilities. India signed a safeguard agreement with IAEA and put their civil nuclear facilities under IAEA safeguards. So that is how now India has been accepted as a responsible nuclear power in the world. We have exceptional waivers from NSG and IAEA. Despite the fact that India has not signed the NPT, India is still eligible to do nuclear commerce. Not just the Indo-US nuclear deal. Once we got this IAEA, once we got these waivers and the restrictions were uplifted, then after that, and USA played a very prominent role in helping India do this. After that, India has signed nuclear deals with Japan, with Kazakhstan, with Russia, with France. Multiple nuclear deals have been signed in order to source nuclear material, nuclear fuel, nuclear technology, but only for civilian purpose, but only for peaceful purpose. All these waivers which has been given to India have been given for peaceful purpose. India is a nuclear weapon state, but India has separated the military facilities of the nuclear military facilities from the civilian nuclear facilities. Civil nuclear reactors have been put under IAEA safeguards. That is how India's role as a nuclear power has evolved in the world. India, and all this must be mentioned, how we were supportive of disarmament, but then we did not sign NPT, and for which reasons we did not sign, then how India is not a nuclear pariah state anymore, exceptional waivers given by NSG, IAEA, and Indo-US nuclear deal which was signed, which played a prominent role in that. So this is how you have to describe the entire evolution, which could have been easily done with the help of our notes. Now let us discuss the next question. Relations between India and Russia are rooted in history, mutual trust, and mutually beneficial cooperation. Discuss. Basically, here you have to describe the entire India-Russia relations. Entire India-Russia relations, you've been given a statement that India-Russia relations are rooted in historically, we've been friends and close partners of each other. They have been mutual interest between India and Russia, and also they have a mutually beneficial cooperative relationship. So basically, the statement is talking about the strong friendly relations which does exist between India and Russia. We have to discuss the status of this relationship. Again, was discussed in much more detail in our classes, could have been easily done. India-Russia relations, start with this quotation, the present relevance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had said, an old friend is better than two new ones. Because there are these concerns that, you know, we've become close partners of US also now. So therefore, India-Russia relations may be jeopardized, may take a backseat. India has said, no, this is not going to happen. So India and Russia have been, historically have been very close partners. In fact, the predecessor of Russia, Soviet Union, was a very close partner of India. And that without understanding Indo-Soviet USSR relations, will not be able to understand India-Russia relations. So Indo-USSR relations should also be mentioned. India had signed friendship treaty with USSR in 1971. Then the successor of Soviet Union, Russia, India-Russia became strategic partners in the year 2000. India-Russia strategic partnership was declared in the year 2000, which was elevated to, in 2010, to special and privileged strategic partnership status. In 2017, they celebrated the 70th anniversary of the relationship also. So all these points must be mentioned. India and Russia has a strong defense and security cooperation. We've been buying weapons from them historically since Soviet days, and not just buyer-seller relationship. We have a relationship of joint research, development and production, advanced defense technology, development and production of advanced defense technologies and systems. So it's not just a buyer-seller relationship. Russia has been sharing their technologies with India also. We are doing joint research on weapon development as well. So very strong. BrahMos missile system is an example. S-400 missile system is an example, which Russians have recently provided to India. Recently, India has decided to buy 21 MiG-29s and 12 Sukhoi 30 MKI aircraft from Russia. Also, this $5.5 billion S-400 deal. India and Russia has decided to jointly manufacture Kamov Ka-2 helicopters. BrahMos missile system program has been a joint initiative of India and Russia. All this must be mentioned. S-400 deal, that can be discussed. Then space cooperation relationship has also been there. Energy cooperation relationship has been very robust. ONGC Videsh has made investments in Sakhalin. Also, robust nuclear cooperation relationship. India and Rosatom, NPCIL and Rosatom, they've been jointly building a Rupur nuclear power plant in Bangladesh. And also, Russia has been helping us in our peaceful nuclear facilities, Kundankulam nuclear power plant. On international issues also, Russia and India has been partners. Russia has supported India's demand to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council. India has supported India's demand to become a member of NSG. In fact, in the previous question which we discussed, we should also mention there that India has been demanding a membership of NSG now. So that point I had forgotten. You should mention that also. Both countries, they cooperate in various multilateral forums like SCO, BRICS. So that also, and recent developments. In the month of November itself, Putin had visited India. This happened, the 2021, 21st India-Russia Summit. Every year, annual India-Russia Summits are held. So he had visited, and this is the outcomes. 10-year defense cooperation agreement was signed. India and Russia have decided to jointly produce AK-203 assault rifles. Also, they have put up a target that India and Russia would enhance bilateral trade to $30 billion by the year 2025 and bilateral investments of $50 billion by the year 2025. RBI and Bank of Russia will cooperate in order to tackle with cyber attacks. Also, both nations have agreed that they should jointly fight against terrorist organizations like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-Taiba, drug trafficking, and organized crime. First 2+2 dialogue was also held this time. So India already has been having 2+2 dialogue with all Quad countries. Now we also have 2+2 dialogue with Russia. So this is, this is how you describe the relationship that has been. But there are challenges also. First of all, our arms trade has reduced. Arms trade with Russia has reduced. Earlier, Russia used to be 90. We used to buy 90% of our arms from Russia. That has come down to 60%. India's closeness with USA has been a challenge. How to balance India-US relations and India-Russia relations. The entire CAATSA, the point of the CAATSA Act must be mentioned here. Also, we have seen recently that Russia and China has a different idea of Indo-Pacific. They prefer to call the areas Asia-Pacific. They say Indo-Pacific is an exclusive term, whereas Asia-Pacific is an inclusive term, which is not in line with Quad's idea of Indo-Pacific. That also there is a problem there. Then also, trade relationship is weak. Trade is only on arms supplies. Trade in goods is very, very meager, only $8.1 billion. So the problem is lack of connectivities. For that, INSTC is very important. Reduction in arms trade I've already discussed. So these challenges are also there. Even though the relationship has areas of cooperation, mutual trust, beneficial relationship, arms trade, defense cooperation, but then there are challenges as well. And then the views of experts also. We could have used C. Raja Mohan saying that Russia's tightening embrace of China and it's flirting with Pakistan army. With the Pakistan, Russia has started doing joint military exercise called Druzhba. Have started selling weapons to Pakistan also. So he says he's a concern, but India, Siraj is a realist scholar. He says India should not lament this. India should, view India-Russia relations with a clear-eyed realism. We've been supporting a multipolar world. Now we should live to it. We must learn to live with the multipolar. This is multipolar reality. That, Russia also has the right to have relations with other countries. And it will, if it is engaging with Pakistan and China, we shouldn't start lamenting it. In fact, we should focus on strengthening India-Russia synergy. India-Russia synergy. So this is Siraj Mohan's viewpoint could have been used here. Sham Saran's viewpoint could be used. He says that nostalgia may be useful, but it can't drive the relationship at present. The weakest aspect of the relationship is driven by government-to-government relations only. People-to-people relations should also be encouraged. Srinath Raghavan's viewpoint. He says that Russia has always seen India through the prism of realism. Russia looks at India from transactional purpose as buyer. So, Srinath Raghavan is saying that, in Russia has been having a transactional relationship. So we should not expect in present times that Russia will do whatever. Russia will be sympathetic or sensitive to all our concerns that Russia should not engage with Pakistan, should not engage with China. But that's not a rational expectation because it has been a transactional relationship as far as Srinath Raghavan is concerned because Russia was the biggest arms supplier to India. So these viewpoints of scholars who talk about the challenges in the India-Russia relations and the way forward, this can also be discussed. So all this we have done in our class. It was a very straightforward question. In fact, we have to basically discuss India-Russia relations, all areas of cooperation, and then also certain challenges and then certain viewpoints as well we must discuss. Discuss sustainable development goals. First, you must define what is sustainable development. This is a PSIR optional answer. You must first define. You must talk about the Brundtland Commission report. We had discussed this in our class, in class notes, we had discussed 1987 Brundtland Commission report. Our common future gave the idea of sustainable development, which is defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. The concept of need and the concept of limitations have been highlighted there. Then in the 92 Rio Summit, Commission on Sustainable Development was formed. So all this background should be given to your answer. What is the concept of sustainable development? India has been supporting the concept of sustainable development. Then the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by UN in 2015. All goals. There are all these goals. All these goals you should have written in your answers. There are 17 goals which has been adopted by UN as far as SDGs are concerned. I'm sure you must be knowing about this goal: no poverty, zero hunger, good health, welfare being, quality in education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, and so on and so forth. There are in total 17 goals. All these should have been highlighted in the answer. 17 goals and 169 targets. The deadline is 2030. Then Antonio Guterres has suggested, and we discussed this in the section A video also. Antonio Guterres has suggested developmental reforms in UN, that the ECOSOC and the working of specialized agencies should be molded in a manner that the SDGs are implemented. SDGs are implemented by the deadline 2030. That point should also be highlighted here. So this is how you could have attempted this particular question. Discuss SDGs as set by UN. So concept, how sustainable development concept emerged, how the goals, when they were adopted, what are the goals, Antonio Guterres' viewpoint on that, that is more than sufficient to answer this question. Identify drivers of India's new interest in Africa. Identify drivers of India's new interest in Africa. This again is important. And in fact, the same question was asked in the GS paper also. India-Africa relations. Drivers of India's new interest in Africa. Why is India so interested in Africa? What is India's Africa policy? What is the implication of India's Africa policy? This is what we have to write. Africa is the continent of the future. India's long-term prospects are closely tied with the success of India's Africa strategy. This is how you should start your answer. These notes we had discussed in the classes. And why is Africa important? Why is Africa seen as a continent of the future? Rich natural resources, long-term economic potential, youthful demography. It's a group of 54 countries. African Union has 54 members, which can help a particular country in a multilateral organization. So for example, if India wants permanent membership in the UN Security Council, if the amendment of the charter is done, these 54 countries as a bloc would vote in favor of India. So this 54 block of 54 countries can help a country in a multilateral organization. They certainly, if they support, their support in a multilateral organization at the global level will be very critical. So more and more countries today are interested in Africa because of rising economic opportunities, energy sector, mining sector, infrastructure sector, developing connectivity. These have been the major priorities. So this is why Africa is being seen as the continent of the future. Prime Minister Modi has described India-Africa relations as a strong emotional link which is based on shared history of struggle against colonialism and our aspiration to bring prosperity to our people. So this must be mentioned, Prime Minister Modi. You can quote Prime Minister Modi here. And what is India's Africa policy? What is India's Africa policy? You could have also mentioned Hamid Ansari. He talks about synergy between India and Africa, and then jump directly to India's Africa policy. Prime Minister Modi has given 10 guiding principles of India-Africa engagement. These are the 10 guiding principles. This is India's Africa policy. For us, Africa is top of our priority. India will, try to help development of Africa, and our approach will be guided by Africa's priorities, the ground realities of Africa, not the top-down approach, but the bottoms-up approach. India will open up its markets and make it easier for Africans to have trade and invest in India. Also, India will use its experience as far as the digital revolution is concerned to help Africa. India will help Africa's agriculture. India will cooperate with Africa to combat climate change and also to combat terrorism and extremism. Also, India would try and, with the help of African nations, India would want to ensure oceans which are open and free and also which will benefit all the nations. Africa should not become a theater of rival ambitions like in the past. During colonial times, this has happened. And also after the colonization, we have seen that major powers of the world, they have tried to plunder resources of Africa. But the future should be not like this. We should create such an Africa which addresses the aspirations of Africa's youth. This is the guiding principles given by the Prime Minister Modi. These are India's guiding principles, which deals with India-Africa policy. This is India's Africa policy. So with in line with these guiding principles, India is trying to engage with Africa. We've been also hosting India-Africa Forum summits that can be mentioned here, and India's guiding principles, India's Africa policy in line with Agenda 2063. What is Agenda 2063? African Union has adopted this agenda in order to transform Africa into a global powerhouse of the future, and also to ensure inclusive and sustainable development in Africa. So this is something which India's approach towards Africa is in line with Agenda 2063. Because India wants to help Africa in its growth, in its development. And India's approach is bottoms up. That is, we will look at African priorities, ground realities, the needs of the people of Africa, and then engage with Africa on the basis of that. Whereas Chinese approach is resource extraction approach. Chinese approach is top-down approach. China's investments in Africa has been very, very aggressive. But they follow top-down approach. Top-down approach, that means investments are imposed on African countries. These investments at times are not even viable, not even sustainable, and then the poor African countries get into the debt trap. Whereas India's policy is to develop capacity of Africans. India has been investing in small and medium-scale industry to develop the domestic capability of Africans. So that has been the approach. So this should be mentioned in the answer. Also, viewpoint of the ambassador HHS Vishwanathan. He has been India's ambassador to African countries in the past. He himself had said that India's approach is in line with Africa Agenda 2063 of Africa. Rajiv Bhatia could have been mentioned here. He also talks about Agenda 2063. Economic partnership between India and Africa. The trade volume between India and Africa is $55.9 billion, the latest figures. Which was earlier $39 billion, and India has become the fifth largest investor in Africa. So all this Asia-Africa Growth Corridor project should be compulsorily mentioned in this particular answer. India, Japan jointly have launched this to develop connectivity with Africa based on these 4 pillars. So all this, and the challenge obviously is the Chinese challenge, the Chinese aggressive investments in Africa. Then we must also mention the viewpoint of scholars in the later half of the answer, how Harsh V. Pant has compared and have contrasted approaches of India and China. He has differentiated between India-China approach. India's approach is the approach of helping and developing Africa's productive capacities, diversifying skills and knowledge, and investing in small and medium scale industries in Africa, bottoms up approach. Whereas China's approach is approach of resource extraction. So that is what Harsh V. Pant has to say. During COVID also, India has helped Africa. Vaccine Maitri policy has given free vaccines to 40 African countries. Dr. Subramaniam Jayashankar in that particular context spoke in UN that the world should help Africa during the pandemic. That also could have been mentioned. And also the viewpoint of Sujon R. Chinoy, who says that COVID is an opportunity for India. During COVID, we should help Africa and develop more synergy with Africa. All this could have also been mentioned in the answer. And also, Shyam Saran's viewpoint to conclude your answer. Shyam Saran says, yes, China is a challenge. China's engagement with Africa, Chinese investment in Africa, China's trade with Africa, China is the largest trading partner of Africa, is much more than India's. But India should not follow the Chinese path. It is important that India does not play a game of catch up with China. Rather, it is more important to leverage India's own unique strengths. So it's not that if China is plundering African resources, is following a resource extraction approach in China, is exploiting the mineral resources. It's not that India should also do the same. India should work on its own unique strength. Unique strength of India is help in Africa's growth and development, sustainable development, develop their domestic capacity, empower them. This has been India's approach, and which should be continued. There is no point to, play catch-up game with Africa. So this is what Shyam Saran has to say, and this is how you can conclude your answer. So this is how you have attempted all these questions, and all these questions were directly from our notes, from our class discussions. Anybody who attended our class discussions and have read our notes could have been easily able to attempt this. And I'm sure students have done this. I'm very happy that this must have benefited the students. So in this very short video, I have tried to summarize everything. I have tried to discuss all questions, which is a very challenging task also to do all of this in 2 hours. So I've tried to do that so that student community at large can benefit from this and can incorporate all of this in their answers whenever they write the exam. So I hope the video has been beneficial to all of you. All the very best who have written the exam. May God bless all of you and all the best for good results in the future. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.